I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. The thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, welcome to day 4 of the Ashley Benefield trial, and we're going to go right to the defendant going onto the stand, testifying in chief on her own behalf. You guys ready? Let's go to that right now. So there was a recent headline. Ashley Benefield gives emotional testimony in her defense. I thought he was trying to kill me. So we're going to be dealing with that soon. My things would be going in last, right at the front, so they'd be easy to get out first, she told the jury. He said, it shouldn't be your stuff, my house. He said, I can see what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave. I don't have to leave. I can stay and spend the night if I want to because I'm your husband. You can see what she's implying there. So it's kind of like she's saying that they broke up in that moment, right?
All right, the jury has completed their review of Defendant's Exhibit 6. Mr. Taylor, your next witness.
Yes, sir. The defense calls Ashley Benefield.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Not exactly a packed courtroom.
Good morning, Ms. Benefield. As you've heard me tell other witnesses, just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from the microphone. It does adjust up, down, left to right. And if you speak in a loud, clear voice, the electronics will pick up everything.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor.
Good morning. Will you tell?
Okay, so Sue has asked for a brief synopsis. I think you're going to get a brief synopsis through this defendant's version of events. The brief synopsis is basically a young ballerina was in a relationship with a man about 30 years older, and she then shot him. Was it self-defense or not? That's basically it. You're going to get her version right now.
Tell us your full name and spell your last name, please.
Ashley Christina Benefield, Benefield.
How are you feeling this morning, Ashley?
Nervous.
All right. Try best you can to relax, and we'll get through this.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit, Ashley, about where you were born and raised.
I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland.
What type of family values were instilled in you?
Jackson Howell.
Oh,
I believe in the importance of kindness and compassion, empathy, honesty, hard work, accountability.
What type of work did your father do?
My
Objection relevant.
I'll allow it.
My dad was a Naval Academy graduate who was a Navy pilot, and then started flying privately for the airlines, which is what he still does.
And how about your mom?
When I was born, my parents decided that my mom would stay home to take care of me full time since my dad traveled so much.
I want to ask you a few questions about your childhood. Did you have any siblings?
I grew up an only child.
Were your parents active in your development as a child?
Yes, they were very active in my schooling and supportive of my pursuit of the arts.
Hold on one second, I'm sorry. We need some, get some headsets. Headsets.
Sorry.
How many? We need some just request to speak up. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I misunderstood. All right, Ms. Benfield, yeah, if you could scoot a little bit closer and speak up so the jury can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do the best.
I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
Sure, do the best you can, Ashley.
Okay.
Well, she seems to be crying already.
Do you have any hobbies?
I love art. I like drawing, painting, sculpting, ballet. I enjoy gardening, baking, cooking. Most importantly, I'm a mom.
What type of high school did you attend?
Objection. Can you
I'm going to sustain at this point.
Um,
I'm trying to establish her ballet, Your Honor.
All right, if it's related to something specific, then
Yes,
yes.
sir. Thank you. Tell us about your high school, Ashley.
I went to a small private Christian school.
And did you study anything in particular in high school?
I was focused on pursuing ballet.
And was ballet a large part of your curriculum when you were in high school?
Yes, I danced full time. I actually finished my last few credits my senior year with an accredited homeschool program for athletes, so I could dance during the day.
Do you still dance professionally?
No.
Why not?
I retired after I tore my hamstring.
I want to ask you about Doug. When did the two of you meet?
We met August 25th of 2016.
And tell us what your impression of him was when you met.
He was very confident in who he was, passionate about what he was doing for work. He was fascinating to talk to.
What was it, if you recall in particular, that attracted you to him, Ashley?
He was funny, very smart, charming. We just instantly clicked.
Was Doug in the military?
Yes, just like my dad, he was in naval aviation.
Did he turn out to be who you thought he was?
No, not at all.
I want to direct your attention, Ashley, now, if I can, to the day of the homicide, September 27, 2020.
Okay.
Specifically late in the afternoon. Would you tell us why Doug was at your home?
He came over to help load some of the larger items that my mom and I had kind of pre-staged in the garage into the U-Haul truck.
And were there any discussions between the two of you about the order?
Did she just say pre-staged? Did she just say pre-staged? Did I hear that right? Just go back slightly.
Doing for work. He was fascinating to talk to.
What was it, if you recall in particular, that attracted you to him, Ashley?
He was funny, very smart, charming. We just instantly clicked.
Was Doug in the military?
Yes, just like my dad, he was in naval aviation.
Did he turn out to be who you thought he was?
No, not at all.
Well, I wonder whether she turned out how he thought she would be, because they didn't end up having a traditional marriage. She didn't tell him about that their daughter had been born. They didn't really ever live together.
I want to direct your attention, Ashley, now, if I can,
Here it comes.
to the day of the homicide, September 27, 2020.
Okay.
Specifically late in the afternoon. Would you tell us why Doug was at your home?
He came over to help load some of the larger items that my mom and I had kind of pre-staged in the garage.
Yeah, I must say that is really, really weird. To say pre-staged, I mean, in the context of this crime, it does make one wonder, was this a premeditated crime? You're talking about pre-staged. I was hoping we could see her expression when she said pre-staged. I was hoping we could see her mouth say pre-staged, but she does definitely say pre-staged.
Into the U-Haul truck.
And were there any discussions between the two of you about the order that these things should be placed in the back of the truck?
Yes, we had discussed that my things would be going in last, right at the front, so they would be easy to get out first. At one point, he had me help him load one of the larger pieces into the back.
So I want to already challenge what she's saying. Just go back again.
At one point, he had me help him load one of the larger pieces into the back of the U-Haul truck. And when I was up in the...
And were there any discussions between the two of you about the order that these things should be placed in the back of the truck?
Yes, we had discussed that my things would be going in last, right at the front.
So let me ask you, do you find anything strange in what she's just said there? Is there any implication in what she's just said there, would you guys say? Joe says, I think she meant that yeah, I've also not heard it. Yeah, I know what is being suggested here. Thanks a lot, Tani. Do you guys know what I'm sort of raising a flag at? Let's just see if there's anyone. Kate says there's nothing sinister there. Okay, let me... Celtic Moon says, I've moved many times in that pre-stage stuff many times. Okay, so this is what I'm getting at. She's already saying, in terms of the order that they pre-stage things, and in terms of the order that they're going to pack things, her stuff is going to be packed last. What's that already telling you? What's that already telling you? If she's saying the reason he's there is to move her stuff, and she's saying, well, her stuff is going to be moved last, what's that already telling you? Well, I would say it's telling you that it's telling you that none of her stuff was ultimately moved. In other words, if he came there to move her stuff, but she must move her stuff last, then when he arrives there, he's not going to be moving her stuff. And so then you kind of got to ask, well, what is he doing there? I wouldn't be surprised if he was sitting in court right now and you asked him, why did you go to her house? That he'd give some different reason, like she was having second thoughts, or she wanted to give him something that belonged to him, a photo album or something. I don't think he went there to help her move. I mean, they were basically divorced at that point. And so the fact that she says, well, he was there to help me move, but my stuff was going to be moved last. Basically means that none of his stuff was moved, right? Do you follow what I'm saying? Hi, Liesel, good to see you. So yeah, I don't know whether she had intentions of leaving, but I really don't think he was going to help her pack. I mean, if you think about it, if she has got so much reason to fear him, he's got this track record of being a certain way to her. Why the heck would you say, "Hey, could you come help me move my stuff?" That would be like the last person that you'd invite into that situation, right? Right. So I haven't even begun here. I mean, we're barely into 1 or 2 minutes, and there's already kind of a problem with what's going on. Okay. Okay. Let's continue. Yeah. I mean, that is exactly what I'm wondering about here.
So they would be easy to get out first. At one point, he had me help him load one of the larger pieces into the back of the U-Haul truck. And when I was up in the truck with him, I realized that everything had been all like mixed together and it was no longer separated.
Okay, so that's also weird. So she's saying we pre-staged things. We wanted my stuff second, but now she's saying, but we ended up mixing it up anyway. Kind of peculiar. So what is she saying?
And I pointed that out to him, and he got really offended and upset. He said, "It shouldn't be your stuff, my stuff, your house, my house."
Was there a particular demand he made?
So again, does that make sense to you that if you are already divorced and you've gone there to help the person move, that you would say something like your stuff, my stuff? In a separate context, you might say, if you are moving out of your kind of communal home to divorce, you might say that. But if you already divorced, already living somewhere else, and you're just moving, you're already split up and you're already moving from wherever you are to somewhere else, why is someone going to care what stuff it is? You're just like, well, what do we need to move? Let's move it, right? So that already doesn't kind of add up either, right? It doesn't really make sense. So she's talking about it being pre-staged only to say ultimately that nothing was pre-staged in terms of the packing because it was all mixed together.
At that time?
He said I needed to start acting like a wife.
Tell us at that point how you chose to deal with him.
I tried to change the subject. I could see how upset he was getting. So I wanted to kind of alleviate that.
And how was Doug reacting to your efforts to do that?
He was getting more upset and aggressive and threatening.
Do you attempt to avoid confrontation with him?
Yes.
What do?
I was trying to get him to leave. I kept suggesting that maybe we should be done, saying I was tired. We should just wrap it up for the day.
And what was Doug's reaction to that effort?
He heard me, but he completely disregarded what I was saying.
Ashley, would you tell us if there came a time shortly thereafter where there was physical contact between the two of you?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
We were in the living room, and as he came up to me, instead of walking past me, he walked like right into me, like a body check. He like thumped me.
His shoulder to your shoulder?
Yes.
And describe for us, if you can, the force of the bump.
It caught me off guard. I almost fell. I like stumbled.
How was he acting at that point?
He was clearly hostile. He was mumbling under his breath and was glaring at me.
What was your concern?
I could see that it was escalating, and I didn't want him to blow up at me.
Was there a second instance of physical contact?
Yes.
Tell us about that, please.
We were in the garage, and it was very much like the living room. I had just suggested strongly that I wanted to be done for the day. And he, as he came up to me, he walked right into me. Again, body checked me.
Finally, was there a third instance of contact?
Yes.
What happened?
We were in the hallway, and we were coming opposite directions towards each other, and he had a box. And as he walked up to me, he looked me in the eye, and he drove the corner of the box up into me.
Where?
My side.
Indicating on your right side.
Yes, sir.
In the hip area?
Yes, sir.
What was the result of that?
Scratching. It burned.
Yes, sir.
So it's also an interesting choice of words. She says, scratching, it burned. Interesting choice of words. One's got to wonder, does she, in a way, is she referring to what effect all of this was having on her, that being married to this guy was like this constant scratching that was kind of burning her up. Christine says dancers have the most physically arduous job. Excuse me. Yeah, I know she means that the scratch burned afterwards. I just am not sure whether it really she was scratched and whether it really did burn. In other words, what I'm trying to say is I wonder whether she's talking in symbolic truths. I'm just speculating. By the way, this wouldn't be the first time that someone's done this. In the Henry von Bedard trial, which is a triple axe murder trial that I actually attended, it literally was a situation where a 20-year-old had murdered both his parents and his older brother with an axe, and his sister was seriously injured, also with an axe. And Henry had the most superficial cuts on him, very, very, very slight cuts, and no axe wounds on him. So everyone was severely wounded by an axe except him. He had a couple of very superficial knife wounds, which the medical examiner said were self-inflicted. They were also very kind of, it's almost like he went like this and he went like that. They were very vertical and horizontal, if one can put it that way, but they were also extremely superficial. So it wouldn't be the first time someone made it look like they were a victim of something like that.
Ashley, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as defense exhibit numbers 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, just do me a favor, whenever you're holding them up, they were facing the jury until they're admitted.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. 8, 9, and 10.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure who this lady is, but the guy in the background is Doug's cousin.
Will you tell us what exhibit 8 represents, Ashley?
It's a scratch right here.
And was that scratch caused by the cardboard box that you just related?
Yes, sir.
When was that photograph taken?
The night of September 27th, 2020, at the sheriff's office.
Okay, and how about exhibit number 9?
Also scratches on my side.
From the same incident?
Yes, sir.
Also taken that evening at the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and exhibit 10?
The same scratches as in 9. They're just, it's a close-up.
Do these
So I just want to comment on Pauline's comment here, which is to be scratched, you tend to need to have on-skin contact, right? It's very hard for the skin to be scratched if it's through material, and even more so if it's something like a blunt thing like a box. For a box to scratch you, well, it would need something like a staple or something to poke through the material. Otherwise, you're not really going to have scratches. So it's a really good point.
photographs actually truly and accurately reflect the scratches and bruises you received on late that afternoon on September 27, 2020?
Yes.
Do they accurately reflect how the scratches looked when they were fresh?
Yes.
Thank you. I move respectfully, Your Honor, defense exhibits 8, 9, and 10 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
They'll be received.
What was your response, Ashley, after being struck by the cardboard box?
I apologized.
Why would you have apologized?
Because I could see how upset he was, and I didn't want him to get more mad at me.
Where does Doug go after that incident?
He continued to the garage with the box.
And what happens at that point?
We started getting into a back and forth about being done for the day and what still needed to be packed and that I wanted to be done. And we ended up in our daughter's bedroom, and he started screaming at me. He said, "Shut the fuck up." He started calling me names. And he said, "I can see what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave." He said, "I don't have to leave. I can stay and spend the night if I want to because I'm your husband."
At that point, Ashley, how did you feel with respect to your own personal safety?
I was scared.
Did you take any steps to try to avoid anything further?
Yes, I ran to try to leave the house.
Okay, so I hope I don't sound insensitive when I say this. I'm kind of asking a question, so I hope I don't sound insensitive. She's talking about something that is very traumatic. She's in fear for her life. She is in imminent danger. She's scared of a man who she thinks might kill her, I guess. And she's making the right noises. She's making the right faces. She's saying the right things, I guess. Is she actually crying, though? Like, can you see a tear? Have we seen a single tear so far? And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are you convinced? So she sounds very emotional. There's no doubt about that. She sounds emotional. She looks emotional. Is she as emotional as she appears? Or is there a sense that she's pretending to be more emotional than she really is? What I'm trying to say is, if she's really overcome with this trauma, is she actually crying or not? And I've got a couple of other pictures here. I think I've got a good one here. Here's another picture. Do we ever see any tears I think there's another one I've got over here. Where is it? There's another one. So there she's really describing, I guess, the critical moment, the moment of maximum trauma. Do you see any tears over there? Am I being mean? There's another sort of picture from the testimony. Yeah, she's actually being comforted by a lawyer. She looks very distressed, but do you see any actual tears here? One thing that I'm missing, because you see it so often in these situations, is a tissue, like a white tissue. You usually see that. You don't really see it here. But maybe we are going to see tears, and it doesn't necessarily mean if you don't see tears that someone's faking it. Some people don't cry very easily. Maybe Amber Heard's one of them. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just is something one may want to pay attention to, right?
And where did you run to?
To the front door.
Did you make it?
No.
Tell us what happened.
He stopped me. He grabbed me by the hand and he yanked me back. I'm not really sure how he did it, but he spun around so he was in front of me, between me and the door.
So
He said,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
he said, where the fuck do you think you're going?
What was your response? Do you specifically recall? Tell us.
I just blurted it out. I said, I'm done and you need to leave now.
What was Doug's reaction to that command to leave now?
He said, you can't fucking leave me.
Then what happens?
He hit me in the side of the head.
Actually, I'm going to ask you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 7.
Yeah, so it's very unfortunate that we aren't able to see any of these slides showing her injuries, but this is what Henry van Breda had. These were his injuries. So as I say, his family had very, very severe axe wounds. 3 of them died from those injuries. And he had, as you can see, extremely minor, I mean, that's how it's described, minor lacerations. The other thing that I think is probably worth noting is if you are scratched in your skin, then that suggests that if you had clothing on, that clothing probably had to have been scratched as well. Is there scratched clothing? Is there damaged clothing? And that is a very important point. I don't think it makes any sense to say she's saying I'm done when they're already divorced. He knows that she's leaving, so why would he be upset? She's saying that he was upset, but on paper he had divorced her, right? So in a real sense, it doesn't really make sense. He's already said I'm done in terms of getting divorced. So she's almost implying that he wanted to remain in the relationship.
Tell us what that represents.
It's a picture of my face.
Is it an accurate picture of what your face looked like on that night?
Yes, sir.
Who took that photograph?
I don't remember her name. She was at the sheriff's office.
At the sheriff's office? Okay. Now, what What is it about that photograph that shows or reflects the slap or the hit that you got to the side of your head on that day by Doug?
That side of my face is like swollen and puffy and discolored around my eye.
And is your eyelid drooping
Yes,
on the side where you were hit?
yes.
Your Honor, I move Fence Exhibit number 7 into evidence.
Received.
What was different at that moment, Ashley, than at any time in your prior relationship with Doug?
He had never actually hit me before.
What did you do?
I ran
Where?
to my room
Why?
because I was scared.
Ashley, did you have anything in your room that could protect you?
I had my gun.
Did you grab the gun?
Yes.
As you're grabbing the gun, what, if anything, did you hear?
I heard the door hitting the doorstop.
As if it is flung open?
Yes.
And what do you see, Ashley, when you look up?
Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, he didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black.
Does he yell anything at you?
He said, "You're fucking done."
And what does he do at that point?
I held the gun like in front of me and I said, "Stop." And he like turned and he got into this like, it was like a fight.
So that looks to me like a little bit of moisture on her cheek, doesn't it? There's a little bit of what appears to be a tear there.
The veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, he didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black.
Does he yell anything at you?
He said, "You're fucking done."
And what does he do at that point?
I held the gun like in front of me and I said, "Stop." And he like turned and he
I don't know if you can see over there, it does look like there's something going on there.
got into this like, it was like a fighting stance. He like, I got low and he started like moving his arms and his hands around. And he was making these like jerking motions.
What were you expecting when you were holding the gun out in front of you and you told him to stop?
I thought when he saw it, he would leave.
Did he?
No.
At that point, Ashley, what are you thinking?
I thought he was gonna kill me.
It's pretty incredible. Like she's completely shaking. But again, I don't know, do you believe, does it come across as authentic? I mean, it's a very dramatic, but is it authentic?
Tell us what happens next.
He started coming towards me, and then he lunged at me, and I started pulling the trigger. And he just kept coming. And I remember trying to move to get away from him, but he kept coming at me.
Ashley, would you tell us why, if you're holding a loaded firearm, you were attempting to move away?
I was trying to get away from him. I was terrified.
All right, so you're firing. He keeps advancing. What happens next?
It was like his feet slipped out from under him and his legs went up in the air.
When Doug hits the floor, what's your immediate reaction?
I ran to get help.
Can you tell us how many shots you fired?
I have no idea. I was in a panic.
Do you remember anything about the shooting beyond what you've told us here?
It was a blur.
Where did you run for help, Ashley?
To my neighbor's house.
What's your neighbor's name?
John Sant.
Ashley, I have to ask you a couple of very difficult questions. You okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Ashley, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you shot Doug.
I was scared to death. I thought he was gonna kill me. There was nowhere to go. I was trapped in my own house. He wouldn't let me leave.
As you sit here today, Ashley, how do you feel about what happened?
Horrible. He's the father of my child. It's okay, you have to explain it all to her.
Judge, I wonder, could we have a minute, maybe a brief recess, to have her compose herself?
All right. Members of the jury, if you could step out for a couple of minutes, we'll bring you right back. Just leave your notes where they are. And put them face down. Please don't begin your deliberations. You can use your phones, but don't talk with anybody outside the jury about the case. Don't do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we're going to talk anything about. Thank you.
Okay, so you may have remembered in the first live stream I did on this case, I said, what is a ballet dancer? You know, what do they do? And far more than a lot of other performers, they are there to convey emotion. I mean, they convey emotion through facial expressions. They need to, in a sense, they need to reach audience members, you know, at the far end of the stage, at the far end of the audience. Sometimes when you see ballet dancers, their makeup is extremely dramatic. Their eyes are bigger, their faces are paler, whatever, but they basically show a lot of emotion. The movements of their hands are really exaggerated, right? And it's, in other words, they've got to convey pain, love, joy, happiness, excitement, all of that through physical performance, right? They don't say, I'm very unhappy or I'm very in love. They sort of, you know, demonstrate it. And I must say, in the history of cases I've dealt with, this is one of the most demonstrative witnesses I think I've ever seen. Not saying I'm convinced by it. I actually think it's quite a strong performance in a way. I'm not sure if I'm convinced, but it's certainly quite a performance. Yeah, they are actors. They certainly are performers.
All right, you all can have a seat. Ms. Benefield, you can have a seat. You need to take a moment to compose yourself.
Wow, some people are laughing.
It'll be a couple of more minutes till the jurors are finished with their break. Let's, everybody says no. Mr. Taylor, you can resume your direct examination.
Thank you, Judge White. Ashley, would you tell us where the pistol was in your bedroom?
It was in a storage bin. It was on top of my laundry basket.
Will you describe the storage bin?
It was like a square bin with hard sides and cloth covering the sides.
Do you remember how old Emerson, your child, was at the time of this incident?
About 2.
Was Emerson able to access that storage bin?
No,
Whose firearm was
mine.
it? Did you have a license?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you, Ashley, what's previously been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 2.
Yeah, so a couple of you are saying there's no puffy-eyedness. Often when women, there you go, from flowers to market. Often when a woman cries, even long time afterwards, if she's sort of wiped her eyes or whatever, there's a lot of puffiness, a lot of redness. There's none of that on her face. Another thing that you may notice in the previous testimony, she doesn't once wipe her face. So I think there are 2 things one can take out of that. One is if there are tears, and I must say I actually thought I saw a little bit of moistness over here. She wants it to be seen. She doesn't want to wipe it away. She wants it to be seen, right? The other thing is there's a lot of sniffing, but she also doesn't wipe her nose, but there's a lot of sniffing. I can also sniff. And that and the sound of your voice and shaking like that all sounds like someone's really distressed, right? The question is she really distressed? And if she killed him intentionally, if she lured him there, then she wouldn't be really distressed. This would need to be a pretense, right? Yeah, there you go. She does not touch her face or hair. Chelsea says, I ugly cry. Now, I don't know, it's quite hard. Are you going to see any photos of this person when she does cry? What does she look like? That would be the best way to get a real sense of it, right?
And Your Honor, I'd like to, if I could, put that up on the screen. Could we?
So I do want to address this idea. If she's genuinely frightened of him, why does she invite him to her home to help her move? Right? They're divorced. There's nothing more to talk about, really. So why? He comes to her house. She opens the door. They actually apparently carry things together. They move from one room to the other. If she's genuinely frightened of him, did she only genuinely become frightened of him that day? Had she never been genuinely frightened of him before? Right? I must have, the thing I find the most suspicious is that she kind of says the relationship was over during that day in that conversation. It's a little bit like Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. They decide to get a divorce and move to Brighton that morning. Okay, yeah. Is it believable?
Are you from the Elmo?
For the blinds.
Oh, sure. And one more set of lights.
Thank you, Deputy. Ashley, take a look at the picture on your concealed.
Okay, so I just want to take you back 1 or 2 seconds. Does it look like a slight smile on her face? Let's just go back to 1 or 2 seconds here.
Did you have a license?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you, Ashley, what's previously been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 2. And Your Honor, I'd like to, if I could, put that up on the screen. Could we?
Are you from the Elmo?
So if you look at her face sort of there, maybe it's a trick of the light. Might be a little bit later. Does she look unhappy here?
For the blinds.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, it's a little bit further on.
What set of lights?
When the lights, I think, come back on.
Thank you, Deputy. Ashley, take a look at the picture on.
There. Does she look happy there, or is it almost like a mischievous look on her face? I must say, to me, that look reminds me a lot of Amanda Knox. That sort of crinkled eyebrow, right? I don't think you should be talking about medicated. So we're going to blame the medication. But can you see here, this is a very different look to the one that we saw a moment ago.
On your concealed firearm license. And in particular, are we able to zoom in on the portrait, the picture? Yeah. Ashley, do your eyelids look the same in that picture?
Yes, sir.
Do they look different in the picture that we admitted after you were slapped?
Yes, sir.
Let's put the, let me see now. Let's put Defendant's Exhibit Number 7 up on the screen. Ashley, what side of your face did he hit you on?
The left side.
Dan, the left
The
side.
left side.
And as we're looking at this picture, it would be to the right.
Correct.
Is your eyelid on the right side the same as your eyelid on the left side?
No, sir.
And how about your eyebrow? The space between your eyebrow and your eyelid on the right side, is that the same as the space between your eyebrow and your eyelid on the other side?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, Judge. I think we can lift the blinds. Was the firearm registered to you, Ashley?
Yes.
Right, I'd like to now direct your attention back to your initial introduction to Doug. How long was it before Doug expressed his devotion to you?
It was about 4 days after we met that he told me he loved me.
Did any significant event follow after he expressed his love for you?
He flew me to South Carolina, where he was living at the time, and asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
You remember the date?
September 7th.
As far as I know, they didn't tell his daughter about their decision to get married. They sort of kept it a secret.
2016.
How old was he at the time on September 7th, 2016?
54.
And how old were you?
24.
When you finally moved in together, what was it like?
It was challenging. Doug hadn't told his daughter Eva that we had gotten married, and so when she found out, she was really upset. Just understandable. Her mom had suddenly passed 8 or 9 months before, and I was a complete stranger to her. Now I'm moving into her house.
At that point in your relationship, Ashley, describe for us the man you thought you'd marry.
He was very loving and attentive. He was always with me. We did everything together. We laughed a lot. And
So she says he was always with me and we did everything together, but they didn't. I mean, they literally lived apart. She lived with her mother and he lived somewhere else. That's, I don't know whether she's talking about the first days, but certainly the first months of their marriage, they certainly weren't together.
He made me feel very special and loved. He always was looking for ways to be with me and to do things for me.
Was there a short time after that you were separated?
yes, sir.
And what was the reason?
Before I had met him, I had planned a trip, and so I went on my trip. It was a cruise with my mom and one of my girlfriends.
Were you able to communicate with Doug while you were on the cruise?
Yes, sir.
How?
We mostly messaged each other.
I'm going to pass to you what's been marked as defendant's.
I hate to say this, but I'm just wondering. Can't help thinking maybe it's nothing, but she mentions one of her girlfriends going on a cruise with her. Do you know what I'm kind of getting at? Is that relevant to this whole story, I wonder?
Exhibit number 3, I believe, for identification.
Yes. Oh, 3, I'm sorry. I thought
Well
a couple
said.
ones that we did. Yes, sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'll take a minute and go through those, and I'm going to ask you about them.
Okay. Do you want me to read all of them, or?
Yeah, I'll go
Okay.
through all of them. And then I'm going to ask you some questions about them.
Okay.
those text messages actually a true and accurate copy of the messages you received from Doug Benefield while you were on the cruise?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move defense exhibit number 3 into evidence.
Objection?
Can we approach this?
Yes.
Okay, so while they're dealing with that, I guess to be more specific, when we talk about ballet dancers, when we talk about male ballet dancers, would you say that there's an unusual amount of male ballet dancers that are gay, right? Do you think there's an unusual amount of male ballet dancers that are gay? Well, firstly, ballet dancers are typically female. I think around about 80% of all ballet dancers are female, 22% are male. Let's have a look at the stats here. There's quite a gender pay gap. Males actually earn more than females. Quite interesting. Most are white, some are Latino, Asian, quite a low percentage. Age breakdown, very few above 40 years of age, less than 30%, 30 to 40 years, and then mostly under 30 years. Quite well educated, bachelor's, high school diploma, and so on. Anything about sexual orientation? Foreign languages spoken by ballet dancers, most are Spanish, next French, next German. Okay, I'm not going to go too much further with that. But where did I see that statistic? It says here, there are no exact numbers on how many male dancers are gay, but many in the field estimate it's roughly 50%. So it's not uncommon for straight men to be ballet dancers, but there are many gay ballet dancers. Now, the weird thing about lesbian ballet dancers is it's kind of a totally unknown quantity. You never hear about that. So it says there's a scarcity of out ballerinas. Let me just pause this for a second. Just a second. There's a scarcity of out ballerinas. Queer Ballet is trying to change that. I don't know if they're going to provide any stats here. Says there's little data on LGBTQ dancers in ballet. The Dance Data Project found that less than 1% of artistic directors globally are gender expansive. I'm going to wonder, if you were not straight, would you feel comfortable saying it? In this environment? Anyway, it might be nothing. It was just a thought that I sort of was wondering about.
Move to introduce defense exhibit number 3.
Any additional objections?
Oh, I'm
No, I'm not actually thinking about her dating pool being shallow, but that's an interesting point. I'm thinking, was she possibly gay? Because she was with a much too old dude for her, and then she said she went on the cruise with a girlfriend of hers.
I'm sorry, not other than what we discussed.
Hi,
Okay.
John Davis. Good to see you.
Admitted, subject to what we discussed at the bench.
Ashley, in this exhibit number 3, who's represented in blue and who's represented in green?
I take a look again. I'm blue and Doug is green.
You're
Do you guys remember the movie Black Swan, like with Natalie Portman? It actually featured sort of sapphic scenes. There's a pretty memorable scene with Natalie Portman and another ballerina. And what do you think was represented there? Do you remember that? And so one does wonder to what extent that aspect plays into this case, especially if you can imagine if you not heterosexual and you're married to someone and you don't want to be with them and you're trying to get away from them, but you have a child with them, maybe you want to just like get rid of them, right? Because that's not going to change.
blue and white.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I want to ask you what you thought and how you felt after this series of text messages where he said the following to you. And I'll go through them and you can respond.
Okay.
Like all
So that looked like a little smile as well. See if I can get back to it.
I want to ask you what you thought and how you felt after this series of text messages where he said the following to you.
So she's closing her eyes. Yeah, I saw a slight tilt in her lips. Let's just take it further.
And I'll go through them and you can respond.
Okay.
Like
Like I thought I saw something there, maybe not.
always being armed. And understanding them and how to conduct warfare in them for the kingdom. If I dwelt on it, I would go into a rage to remove them from the earth. I desire to exterminate them, and holding back is a challenge. They are rats that should be removed. Last night, just the jerks arguing near you about put me in sheer murderous mood, but I was stuck. I couldn't defend you. But could have been a fight, etc. Only you being with me will over time remove the images in my head. It is
Well, I don't know if we're going to get to them, but so far none of those texts are any animus towards her.
the same, and knowing you were taken advantage of still in my mind makes me explode with anger to take them out. God made you for me. You haven't seen.
Just to deal with this thing, wait, she shot him in the back. No, she shot him in the side.
the warrior side and never want to. We went from joy and passion to now I'm in a testosterone rage inside. But kill the bad people. How long had you been married when you received these texts from Doug?
I believe it was about a month or so. Probably thereabouts.
Do you recall approximately how long you had been married?
Well, we got married in the beginning of September, and this would have been the end of November.
Okay.
So more than that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What did you
2
think?
months and a bit.
Was there anything about those texts that caused you to pause?
You know, at the time, I kind of tried to write it off that he was my new husband and he was just trying to be kind of manly and, you know, be protective and, you know, was trying to show that he really
Quite an interesting word. He's trying to be manly.
loved me. I think that was kind of what I
Did you
thought
think
at
it
the
was
time.
flattering?
Yeah.
Ashley, how long did this facade that you've described of Doug's last?
Probably about 3 months.
And what signs did you begin to see that he was not who you thought he was?
When I got back from the cruise, he started becoming very like controlling and possessive.
Well, I must say, God made you for me does sound like a possessive and controlling person. Like you would think a really possessive and controlling person would say something like that.
He started criticizing everything about me, like the way I would wear my hair or did my makeup or the way I dressed. I found myself trying to change everything about me to make him happy.
If you had to pinpoint a specific incident, Ashley, early on that stands out to you, what would that be?
A friend of his had come to town to visit, and we went out to dinner with him. And when we went to leave, Doug had had a little too much to drink, and so I said that I would drive home. And he instantly got really mad at me. He was offended. He started screaming at me, and it continued all the way home. And when we got inside, I told him that he was drunk and he just needed to go to bed. And that really set him off. And he tried to flip over the dining room table. He threw a chair at me. He kept screaming at me until he stopped, and then he apologized. And he said it would never happen again. He said he's really sorry.
And Ashley, did it?
Okay, so I've got a question. If I was the prosecutor, one of my questions would be: did you ever call the police to report a DV incident? Because in real situations where you have real DV and you have real consequence at the end of that, for example, Nicole Brown Simpson, you had can't remember the exact number. Was it 8 incidents? 8 incidents where the police were called, the police came there, and things happened. Often in a situation like that, you do have real incidents, real assaults, being beaten up, and then it escalates at a certain point. Is there any evidence of that here? any injuries, any times that the police were called? Are there? That's what I would ask as the prosecutor.
Did it happen again?
Yes.
Explain what happened.
We had gone to church.
And I mean, someone says, well, it depends if it's mental or physical, but she said that on the day that she killed him was the first time he'd ever struck her, which is kind of, to me, convenient to her version of events. Yeah, the cross should be
On
interesting.
Sunday, and after service,
Yeah.
you know, after everyone was leaving, we talked to the pastor in like the lobby area in front. And at one point, Doug stormed off. And by the time I caught up with him, I was in the parking lot. And he started cussing at me, calling me names.
So that's another thing you'd want to know. Who before the incident had she complained to? Who was her confidant? Who had she sort of unburdened herself to regarding Doug's bad behavior? You know, if it was this serious thing that was going on, if she hadn't called the police, who had she spoken to about it? Had she spoken to anyone about it?
And when we got in the truck, he accused me of having a thing for the pastor. And he said I was a slut and a whore. And he screamed at me all the way home.
Ashley, was he aggressive and threatening like that in other instances?
It started happening more and more with me, with our animals. He would hurt our pets.
On approximately how many occasions was he cruel to your pets?
A handful.
How would Doug react following a dark episode?
Well, he was either really up or really down. And after, he'd be very sweet and apologetic. And he'd be kind. And things would be good. And it was kind of like a flip of a switch. And something would set him off again.
Did you find anything one day, Ashley, that gave you insight into Doug's marriage to his previous wife, Renee?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what it was.
I had been going through and kind of cleaning and organizing. And I was going through a bunch of old devices like phones and iPads. And I found a texting conversation between Doug and Renee, his previous wife.
Well, I must say it's very unfortunate that Renee can't be here to testify, because Renee would be a great witness either for the prosecution or defense. Renee, his first wife, could say, well, he was a nice guy and never treated me badly. Or she could say, yeah, what she's saying, I experienced as well. Unfortunately, she's not here to say that. And so, again, one's kind of got to wonder, did Renee ever speak to someone about how badly she was being treated?
Let me pass to you, Ashley.
Hey, Iceland, good to
Marked
see
as
you.
Defendant's Exhibit number 11. Can you identify that, Ashley?
This is part of the texting conversation. This is a text from Renee Benefield to Doug.
Is that a true and accurate copy of what you came across that day that you just related to us?
Yes, sir.
At this point, I'd like to move that into evidence as Defense Exhibit number 11.
No objection.
Received.
going to read this to you. Let me know if
Thanks,
it's
Eric.
accurate.
Okay.
I was deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on New Year's Eve on our honeymoon because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You holding a gun to your head twice in my home that I opened to you with my children that still love you. Having to sell everything down to my wedding ring. Finding out you were on Viagra, which all of you had to do was tell me, you know I wouldn't care. Trying to film us making love on our honeymoon. Finding out that you wore eye pencil on and on. I loved you so much I didn't care. That's why I was shocked to think you would take pictures of me without asking. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Wow, does seem like a bit of a creep. It does seem temperamental, and it does seem a
Tell us,
little.
Ashley, how Doug would act when he would go off.
He would call it a fit of rage. Sometimes it was as simple as him just yelling and screaming at me or cussing at me, calling me names. Other times he would throw things or break things or smash things. He would come at me like he was going to hit me. He told me I was lucky that he punched walls instead of me.
Are there any incidences in particular, Ashley, that stand out to you?
Yes.
Tell us, please.
We were having an argument, and he came at me like he was going to hit me. And our dog, Sully, jumped up in between us, and he punched him in the face so hard that he knocked him out. I just remember screaming because I thought he had killed him.
Were there other times that Doug hurt the animals?
Yes, he had hit, kicked, punched Sully. He threw our cat multiple times. One time he threw Snuffy down the stairs.
What kind of impact did this behavior have on you?
I was always walking on eggshells, trying to do the right things. Because if I said the wrong thing, he would get mad at me. And so I always tried to do it right. If I wore the wrong thing, he would call me a whore or a slut. I feel like I couldn't do anything right.
I can't help agreeing with what Tanny says. Shouldn't she be angry? He's not here anymore, so he's no longer a threat to her. She doesn't have anything to be afraid of now. But shouldn't she be angry about how he treated the animals, about how he treated her, about what he did? Shouldn't she be angry? Wouldn't you be angry?
Was there an incident, Ashley, in June of 2017 that you vividly recall?
Yes.
So it's quite interesting how many of us have different reactions. Liesel says this feels real. I think some of it is real. I think the thing about punching the dog unconscious is probably real. Certainly isn't. Another Amy says she probably is angry. Surely she told someone about the pets, yeah. Okay, anyway, let's continue.
Please explain it.
We were having an argument, and it started getting really out of hand. He pulled a gun out
And he was like waving it around. And then he threw it at me. And it hit the wall behind me, punched a hole in the wall. So I went to run to try to leave. He pulled the gun out and held it to his head. He said that he's gonna blow his fucking brains out. And I was gonna have to watch him. And he pulled the trigger and he shot a hole in the ceiling in the kitchen.
Ashley, at that point, what were you thinking about your marriage?
He wasn't anything like I thought he was. I feel like I had made a really big mistake marrying him. It was like I was just living in this nightmare. I never knew what I was going to get.
Did there come a time in July or August of 2017 when you found yourself with child?
Yes.
So let's be clear here chronologically. You became pregnant after this incident where you related that he shot the gun in the ceiling of the kitchen?
Yes, it would have been like right after that, I guess.
Was it planned?
No, it's the last thing on my mind at that point.
How would you deal with Doug?
I tried to do all the right things and keep him happy. Kind of just go with the flow. I didn't want to rock the boat ever.
Did you have a difficult pregnancy?
Yes, I was really sick.
Did you go home from South Carolina to stay with your mom here in Bradenton at the end of August 2017?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a time when you returned to South Carolina?
Yes.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ashley, why you returned to South Carolina?
I had decided that I was going to leave him. And so I went back to get my things. When he brought me down, I didn't even have like a suitcase or anything. So I went back to get my stuff. And I wrote him a note and left him a letter saying why I was leaving.
So I think Deborah has really expressed it best, certainly how I feel, where she says, I don't find her emotions believable. I'm not saying he didn't act like that, but her emotions seem mismatched. That's exactly how I see it. I'm sure that he was a jerk and that a lot of this stuff is true. But for some reason, I'm not really getting the ring of truth from her emotions. I'm just not feeling it for some reason.
I'm going to have an objection.
You approach.
There she reaches for a tissue. So she does have a tissue box at hand. Okay, let's see. Oh. Okay, looks like we're going to go to cross-examination.
Photo that was taken when she was arrested. All right, I was just checking because there's like a speck on it. I was checking to see if that was a paper speck or in the picture. So yes, what we originally talked about, I don't agree that there's a blanket prohibition on the entry of a booking photo. However, it is a bit of a more unique situation if there was an erroneous decision not to allow one party or the other to introduce evidence during the other side's case in chief, it's a fairly simple remedy that the other party can just call them in their case in chief or in rebuttal, lay
Yeah,
the proper
good
predicate and
point.
introduce the evidence if it's admissible. In this situation, it's a little bit different, obviously. These would need to be authenticated by the defendant, so I don't think it's improper. I'll allow it.
Also a valid point.
The only thing I'm going to require, however, is the 104 is just to be referred to by the date. On such and such a date was your photo taken.
And Judge, I respectfully disagree. There's no case law that says a jury cannot know that a person was arrested. The only case law is that a person cannot be made to sit at a trial in jail clothes. But there is no prohibition. They know she was arrested.
Mhm.
So I believe that helps substantiate the date that it was taken and the time that it was taken.
And I think you can ask for the date and time. So, yeah, no, overruled.
All right, can I see the exhibits?
Of course.
And Judge, just for the record, the state has still not received the ordered defense exhibit list that we instructed them to get.
Are there any other defense exhibits? Well, let me, let's finish. Let's. Are you all can have a seat? Welcome back, everybody. Over the lunch break, did anybody talk amongst yourselves or discuss the case in any way? Did anybody talk with anybody outside of the jury about the case? Or did anybody do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about?
No, sir.
Everybody says no. All right, State, you may begin your cross-examination.
I would like to just start with a couple of issues. So first, Doug Benefield never punched you ever, correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Doug Benefield never choked you ever.
No,
He never kicked you.
no.
He never pointed a gun at you,
He waved a gun in my direction.
but it was not pointed at you,
It
correct?
was pointed at me while he was waving it at me.
He never came at you with a knife
No,
or a club
no,
or a baseball bat.
no.
So there are 30 years difference between you and Doug, correct?
Yes,
And you got married after 13 days.
yes,
And you spoke with him about or organized with him about starting this ballet.
yes.
Correct. And all of the money for the ballet came from him or investors, right?
My mom also funded the part of the ballet.
You didn't put anything into it. Money.
Not from my account, no.
Okay. In fact, during this time in South Carolina, you never worked, did you?
He wouldn't let me work.
Okay. When you said in the very beginning he flew you to South Carolina to visit before you were married, he paid for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the cruise you talked about going on, he paid for that?
No,
He didn't.
he did not pay for the cruise. No.
Okay.
Yeah, he paid for my friend to go, but I had already paid for my mom and I to go. So
Okay.
Wow, he
So he
paid
paid
for
for
a
your friend
friend
to
to go.
yes.
And he did not go with you.
Oh no. Mm-mm.
That's weird.
I want to ask you about the text messages that the defense talked to you about. It's going to be Defense Exhibit 3. I'm going to hand it to you. But I have the entirety of it on a spreadsheet that I'm going to put up, which is State's Exhibit 99. If we could dim the lights, please. And Judge, based on the rule of completeness, state would enter into evidence States 99.
Did you want to be heard in addition to what we said earlier?
I haven't actually seen the specific message.
Well, I kind of interpret that one slightly differently. Did she want to work? Didn't she marry him because she didn't want to work? She doesn't work right now. I mean, this is a really good point. Does she want to work right now? Is she working right now? Right? Is she?
Any objection to states 99? Received.
So I'm going to put this up on the board behind you, screen. We're trying to get it to come up on the screen.
Okay, Jeepers, how long?
So I would like to orient you to what we're looking at. So on the top line, it gives whether the messages are outgoing or incoming. That would be the third, fourth column that we're looking at. And what I would like you to do is read the body of these as we go through. I'm going to expand it so you can see it. And if you could just read these for the jury.
Okay. One part is just looking at Renee.
Who is that from you or from Doug?
It's from Doug to me.
Okay. So from Doug, one part is just looking at Renee. Okay, go ahead.
I'll tell that part to start. The day I met her, I felt her before I saw her. Oh. My ex-husband lived to argue. Renee and I maybe argued 5 times in 15 years, and even then ended up laughing. Smiley face.
Well, that's quite a statement to make. We argued 5 times in 15 years. Now, I guess you've kind of got to ask yourself, is that believable? Would Renee agree about that?
I'm a clown at heart and love people being happy. That seems like a hard act to follow. Baby. Like, always being armed. Yes, my love.
And the outgoing messages are you or Doug?
It looks like outgoing is Doug. Yeah, outgoing would be from Doug.
Judge, can we see the date for reference of the messages?
It's up on the screen.
2016, September 2016.
So yes, my love, I think was the last thing you said. And then what's the next thing?
Are you doing things that are dangerous?
And you're going to have to speak up just a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Here.
Are you doing things that are dangerous? to think of all the time that you were not with me and understanding them and how to conduct warfare in them for the kingdom.
Where was he when he was sending you these messages? While you were on the cruise?
I believe he would have been in Charleston.
Okay. He wasn't on a business trip?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Continue reading. All the other people.
All the other people. Then a rectangle. It makes me so sad. And then another rectangle. If I dwelt on it,
Another
I would go
rectangle.
into rage to remove them from the earth.
And your response to that?
Yes, baby, I hate it. It hurts. He said I could defend myself. You were easy prey for predators. You're sweet and want to please people, and they used that.
And you said, I'm sorry, and then he said,
I desire to exterminate them, and holding back is a challenge. They are rats that should be removed.
and you said,
Oh, baby, my love. Yes. Like that night, like last night, just the jerks arguing near you about put me in a sheer murderous mood, but I was stuck and I couldn't defend you. I said, thank you, baby, but I was okay. He said, but could have been a fight, etc. Only you being with me will over time remove images in my head. It is same, and knowing you were taken advantage of in my mind makes me explode with anger to take them out. God made you for me. And I said, yes, baby. He said to enjoy the beauty he did craft on earth. I see Renee as Eva's mom, not my wife. It is strange, but
can you pull that back up?
He said it is strange, but there is no emotional connection. I said, well, I'm glad. I just wish I could see it that way.
And you said, I'm glad, I wish I could see it that way. Were you talking about being jealous of his relationship with Renee?
I guess you could put it that way.
Okay. You can continue to read.
I know we both have a battle to fight in our minds. He was sitting on the mantle in the background. I'm crazy, I know. But it just killed my heart. I know I see you in my mind with a bad person with your legs spread and a shitty person choking you out. That haunts me. I love you and I never want to hurt you.
Wow, weird messages.
I'm sorry. Rectangle. Now all I see is some douchebag on top of you, fucking you with your legs spread and him choking you out and fucking you more. Right now, I literally want to kill him or them. I said, baby, don't even think like that. He said, you haven't seen the warrior side and you never want to. I said, no one will ever touch me. I am yours. I don't. You are right. I want to see you only as my sweet and loving husband who is gentle to me and kind. He said, we went from joy and passion to now I'm in a testosterone rage inside. And who is always there and safe? That's what I said. And I said, let's not ruin the day. he said, but kill the bad people. Okay. And I said, tell me that you love me.
So this conversation was about things that you had told him that people had done to you, correct? When he's talking about, I'm imagining this, I'm imagining people choke you, he's talking about a conversation that you had had with him explaining that this had happened.
I think he was referring to on the cruise one night. I was talking to him on the phone, and I was sitting out in the hallway up at the top deck, and I was just trying to get somewhere where it'd be quiet so I could talk to him. And it was near, there was some like a bar or something up there, I think, I'm not sure, but people were coming in and out, like maybe a restaurant. And while we were
I'm
talking,
gonna stop you
he
there.
heard.
Is the answer yes or no? Did,
She's saying,
He needs to allow her to finish her answer, Your Honor.
you finish your answer.
He had heard a couple guys that were talking loudly, and he got upset because he thought these guys were going to hurt me. And so he had talked about then that he imagined that, you know, I was out in the world without him and that people were going to take advantage of me and that he didn't know it was going to happen to me.
and he was afraid for your safety.
Yeah.
And he was saying that if anybody hurts you or he thinks about anybody hurting you, it sends him into a rage.
Yes.
And that scared you.
I'm sorry.
And that scared you.
Well, as I said earlier, at the time, I kind of, you know, played it off in my head that he was just my new husband who was trying to be protective and like show that he loved me by kind of being, you know, manly.
Okay. So I want to talk about you having a baby. So Doug had a vasectomy removal in April of 2017, right?
Yes.
And you paid for that.
Part of it went on my debit card or my credit card.
And your intention was to get pregnant.
Yes, we had talked about that. Yeah.
And this was how many months after you were married?
We got married in September, so October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 7.
And was
I seem to remember saying that within 3 months of getting married, he had revealed himself to be a completely different person. So why would you then want to have a child with someone who you feel has already shown their true colors? Just a question.
this during this time you said he had started criticizing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the way you looked, your clothes, the way you acted. He was, according to you, he flipped a table, tried to flip a table, threw a chair, right?
Yes.
He would scream at you.
Yes.
He would call you slut and whore,
Yes.
and you want a baby.
That's quite an interesting point.
I mean, yeah, we were married. We wanted a family.
Okay. So the vasectomy reversal happens, and I believe you said that this baby was a surprise. Is that what you said?
Well, we weren't like planning on it right then. You know.
Were you having unprotected sex?
I suppose so.
Okay. So you knew that unprotected sex would result potentially in a pregnancy.
The doctor had told us that it probably wouldn't work for a while, so it wasn't something that we thought would happen that fast.
Okay. But it did.
Yes.
How quickly? When did you get pregnant?
I guess July.
And right around this time is when you say the incident happened where Doug threw a gun at a wall.
He threw it at me.
Shot a gun at the ceiling. I think you made several allegations, correct?
Yeah, he admitted to it, but yes.
What were you arguing about?
I think Evo was part of it. I don't specifically remember.
And wasn't it true that you had a problem with Eva and you thought she was disrespecting you at that time?
I wouldn't say I had a problem with Eva. There was a lot of tension in the house, but yeah, there's a lot of things going on that
Okay.
were not ideal.
You knew she was
Yeah, I must say, it's starting to feel more and more like Deb versus Heard, isn't it?
15.
Yeah.
And you knew she had just lost her mother tragically to death.
Yeah.
And you were how much older than her?
10 years, 9 years, 10 years.
And this tension surprised you.
No. I mean, at first he had told me
I
that
think
she
she's
was really going to
28
love
to
me and
29.
that she was ready to have a woman in her life and that he wanted me to move in quickly because she needed a mom. So he made it sound like she also felt that way.
And you had no feelings of your own.
Oh, I was excited to get to be her stepmom.
And you gave her a shadow box right around this time, correct?
For Christmas,
Oh,
it would
she's
have been in
32 years old
December.
at
All
this
right.
point.
And what
I
was the
think.
shadow box?
You want me to describe it?
Yes.
It was like a small picture. It had like deep sides and like the glass was at the front of it. And there was a sand dollar that I had painted and decorated. And I put it on like a black cardstock. And I wrote a saying on it that said something about how like you can be strong through the storms and that, you know, seashells are beautiful things that come out of storms.
And that shadow box is the reason you were arguing that day with Doug, correct?
I know it came up at one point. I don't know if that was the reason.
And what was the problem with the shadow box?
Eva had taken it apart and I guess had thrown out the thing that I made and was using the picture frame for something else.
What was she using the picture frame for?
She had put a rose from her mom's funeral in it.
And that upset you pretty badly, didn't it?
It made me really sad. I'd taken a lot of time to make it for her and I thought it was special. And yeah.
You began crying.
Yes.
And you dropped to the floor and sobbed hysterically.
Probably.
You were so upset that she put her dead mother's rose in the shadow box.
It wasn't that. It was that she took it apart. I mean, I would have bought her another shadow box.
You went to Doug and said it was disrespectful that she took this apart.
According to Doug?
No, according to you. You went to
Okay.
Doug and said, she's acting disrespectfully. You need to handle her. She upset me. I'm crying.
I don't remember saying that about that.
Isn't it, in fact, what you were arguing about before this whole incident with the gun and the ceiling?
Is this relevant as it relates to the daughter?
Can you approach, please?
Someone asked how old is she? She's 32 now. I think she was 29 at the time. Okay, shall we continue across the break?
Arguing, correct? Discipline Eva. Or with Doug, right?
Yes,
Okay, you're going to the bank and going to do some other errands.
I believe so.
And the entire time you're upset about this shadow box.
I don't distinctly remember that, but the argument kind of came from there, I guess.
And in fact, it wasn't an argument, right? It was you being upset.
Well, he said that like life was out of control and he couldn't deal with the people at home and he couldn't deal with the people at the ballet. And he felt like everything was just too stressful and he was upset with everybody.
And didn't he ask you to stop?
Sure, at some point.
And you didn't stop
I guess not.
for the car ride? No? Yes or no?
I don't remember.
And you kept telling him you need to discipline Eva.
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. And he said, let's just stop talking about this for a while. I need to think.
He was yelling at me.
So he's yelling at you, but you weren't sitting there like you are now, were you? You weren't sitting there like this.
I guess I was buckled into the car, so I probably would have been sitting further back.
And you didn't stop. And then you get home, you're still arguing, correct?
He was still yelling at me, yes.
And you're not yelling at all. And the fact that he had a gun with him when you continued to argue in the house was because he grabbed the gun from inside the car to bring his items from the car into the house, correct?
I'm not sure why he had it, I guess.
Okay. And it was in a holster.
I
Like
believe
credible blick
And you
rate.
both used to carry guns.
so. Mhm.
You carried guns on a regular basis.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
have had at the time more than one gun.
Yes, ma'am.
And you actually bragged, as well as Doug, about having guns, correct?
Yes.
And you would go shoot them on a regular basis.
I haven't been to their range since before the presidential election.
Okay. But during the time that you met Doug at a political event, you had one of the guns in your bra.
Yes, that's where I concealed carried.
Okay. So having a firearm in a car or in the house is not that unusual to you.
No, ma'am.
All right. So after you get back inside, there's this argument that continues on and on and on and on. And you're still asking Doug to discipline Eva.
I don't recall that.
Okay. And you say he was waving a gun around and threw a gun at you. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
So he has a gun in his hand, could point it at you,
He did point
but
it
he
at me.
throws a gun at the wall.
No, he threw it at me. He missed me.
Okay. And it hit the wall.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When was this? What was the date of this argument?
I believe it was the end of June.
2017.
Yes, ma'am.
When was your wedding reception?
It was shortly after that, maybe like a week or two later. I don't remember specifically.
Okay. So even though you've been married before, you were now having a wedding reception.
Yes, when we got married, it was just the two of us.
And at this wedding reception, you had a lot of guests come.
I'd say maybe a dozen. My friends and family came.
And they're dressed up.
Yes,
You're in your wedding dress.
yes.
Okay. And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 10. I want you to tell me what this is. Or I'm sorry, it's 100. I want you to tell me what this is. It's going to come up behind you. What is this a picture of?
That's a picture of Kevin, Christy, me, and then Doug.
Okay. And is that a picture from the wedding reception that we just talked about?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 101. What is that?
That's a picture of me and my friend Christy.
And is that at the same wedding reception?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 102. What is that?
It's a picture of my friend Laura and me, and then my friend Christy.
And this is also at the same reception.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. State will move into evidence States 100 through 102.
Any objection?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Any objection to states
No.
100, 101, 102?
No.
Received.
Thank you. And in States 100, are you scared here of Doug?
No, I would not say no.
You said on direct examination that around this time you were living the nightmare. Those were your words, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you living the nightmare here?
Oh, no, not at that moment. No, that was a very nice day.
How about at this moment?
Oh, it was a good day.
And States 102 at this moment?
Same. It was a good day.
So you get pregnant and you decide to move in with your mother. So when do you decide to move in with your mother in Florida?
It was the end of August, I believe. I was really sick, and he brought me down to my mom's house and dropped me off.
Okay, but going to your mom's house was your choice, right?
We decided together. He said he couldn't take care of me. He was too busy, and that my mom could take care of me better. So I was happy to go.
And you needed someone to take care of you while you were pregnant.
I was really sick, yes.
Okay. So you moved down with your mother at maybe August of 2017, you said?
The end of August, I believe.
Okay. But there's still this issue of the injunction in South Carolina while this is going on, this South Carolina-Florida thing, correct?
I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question.
you said you applied for the South Carolina injunction, or you received the South Carolina injunction right around that time in 2017. Actually, I think you said November 2017.
Yes, a few months later.
So shortly
November.
after you move in with your mother, a couple of months, you file for an injunction in South Carolina.
Yes, ma'am.
And we talked about the fact that, or you talked with the defense about the fact that it was a mutual injunction.
Yes, ma'am.
So both parties agreed to stay away from each other, correct?
Yeah, I believe that it was for both parties to stay away.
No evidence was presented at this hearing.
I don't believe so.
None of your complaints were heard at this hearing.
There was like a written, like a filing.
But the judge, other than that, did not hear any evidence at the hearing.
That's correct.
All of that was forestalled because the two of you agreed, okay, fine, we will have this voluntary stay away order.
It was decided through the attorneys, but I believe that was, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So the judge never found that Doug Benefield was dangerous and ordered this injunction.
I'm not sure what the judge found. I don't know what you mean by that.
There was never a court finding giving you an injunction other than you stipulated to it.
The judge ordered it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I missed a little bit, but this is actually, I think, favorable to the defense that there was a legal incident where Doug's behavior came up, which reminds me a little bit of the Troconis to and fro with Jennifer Doulos, the Doulos to and fro between Fotis and Jennifer.
And this injunction, actually, part of it says that neither party shall harass or threaten or do those types of things to each other.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Okay. So then after you're in Florida, you get a package that you say was in violation of this injunction. And it's a birthday present, right?
Yes.
It's a tea set.
Among other things, yes, ma'am.
And you liked tea.
I like drinking tea. Yes, ma'am.
You drank tea all the time with Doug.
Yes.
Okay. And you open this tea and you claim that it smelled so strongly that you automatically rushed it to the sheriff's office.
I didn't specifically sniff the tea. It was when I opened the box. The whole contents had a very strong chemical smell.
So you immediately rushed it over to the sheriff's office?
No, ma'am. I immediately sealed it up and I left it in my garage.
For how long?
I don't remember specifically. It was maybe a day or two. I don't remember.
It was a little bit longer than a day or two, was it not?
I don't remember.
So after this time goes by, you take it to the sheriff's office and you claim that this was a violation of injunction, right?
It was, yes, ma'am.
And you also claim that this was all part of Doug's poisoning scheme.
So what's quite pertinent here is the idea that she is framing him, that she's setting him up. And why I think this is quite interesting is because where we are right now is exactly that question. Is she framing him? Is she setting him up? Is it you at the expense of me?
Poison you and your unborn child.
Hazmat informed me that there was toxic
I don't want to hear what
chemicals in-
someone else told you. I want to hear what you claimed, that this was part of his poisoning of you, plan to poison you.
Well, based off of what I was told, that was the
Yes
conclusion
or
I came
no,
to.
ma'am? Yes or no? What, according to the way you felt, this gift was a part of his plan to poison you.
It concerned me. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So no charges were filed for that, correct?
Correct.
So you filed for an injunction based on the same allegations, right?
When my injunction in South Carolina was getting ready to expire, yes, I filed for one in Florida.
Okay. So when you filed in Florida, about what time was this? What date?
I could give you a ballpark. It was in the spring. I don't remember exactly
Spring of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you had left Doug in South Carolina August of 2017,
Yes, ma'am.
and you filed for an injunction in the spring of 2018,
That sounds right.
but you hadn't been living with him, correct?
Correct.
You hadn't even had any contact with him for a very long time when you filed for that injunction, right?
Well, other than him sending the box and yeah.
Okay. So what violence were you trying to prohibit by filing this injunction? Everything that happened in South Carolina.
Well, I was just hoping that wouldn't happen again.
Okay. And at the same time you did this motion for an injunction, you also did a motion to terminate Doug's parental rights, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So during this time,
So let's just talk here about that. One thing that is clear is that she wants to terminate Doug's parental rights. One thing that's clear and obvious and certain is that she has an intention to stop Doug from sharing custody with their child, right? And then let me just ask you this question. Does she succeed in the legal sense in that, right? And I think the answer is no. Does she succeed in another sense? Because Doug's dead. Doug's not around anymore. So does she succeed in another sense in ending his, I don't want to call it application, but ending his attempts to share custody with their child? In other words, does she ultimately succeed in preventing him from having custody of their child? I think it's quite a valid point. What do you guys say?
that you haven't been with him in almost a year, at least half a year. There hasn't been any violence other than you say the T said. You're filing for an injunction all at the same time that you're trying to terminate his parental rights. This is all correct, right?
Sounds correct, I
Okay.
believe.
And you hadn't even had the baby yet.
As of when?
As of the time that you were trying to terminate his parental rights.
I don't remember what the date was, but it would have all been around that time.
I must say that is fascinating, that she's trying to terminate his parental rights before the baby's even born. Doesn't that make you feel or think that she wanted his child, or she wanted a child and money, and that's kind of all that she wanted?
And then there's the hearing that goes on for this injunction, right? And this is in front of Judge Moreland, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you had a 2-day hearing on this?
Yes, ma'am.
partially it was a motion for your injunction based on these issues, and it was also Doug's motion to be able to see his child, right?
I believe at some point things got consolidated, but I don't recall specifically.
So at this point, Doug had not seen his daughter.
Correct.
And your daughter was how old?
As of the date, like the last court date,
Yes.
about 6 months old.
And had there been any violence towards you between the time that you filed for this and the time when you had the hearing and she was 6 months old?
He had showed up at night in my driveway, but I mean, there's no physical contact if that's what you're asking.
Okay. And was this a time when the baby had been born?
I don't remember the date of when he was in the driveway.
Um,
Well, I don't want to defend this guy too much because seems a bit funny, but wouldn't it be strange if she'd never seen him once in 6 months? Like she's had his child. Wouldn't it be strange if he doesn't see her once in 6 months? His child has been born in the world. I mean, you would imagine the parent wants to see their child once in 6 months.
How about, since we're talking about this, let's talk about the incident you talked about where the neighbor said that that Doug was there. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, ma'am. He was outside standing in the yard at night, I guess trying to look in the windows of my house.
And where's this neighbor's house?
She is directly across the street.
Okay. And isn't it true, in fact, that this was very dark? It was very dark out.
Yes, ma'am, it was at night.
Okay. And your neighbor told you that she saw someone in her backyard walking, correct?
I think she said that when she confronted him, he kind of ran away.
Okay. She never told you he was at your window.
What she said was that he was trying to look in the windows.
In her yard?
The way the houses are situated, where he was standing, he was looking across into the windows of our house. Yes, ma'am.
And she couldn't see who this person was?
Object.
She told you?
She's asking Ms. Benefield about what the neighbor knew.
She told you she could not identify this person?
She said by just looking, as dark as it was, she had a hard time identifying him by his face, but that she identified his voice.
That's interesting. So let's talk about that. So when she tells you that there's somebody in her backyard, you go to her house, right? You end up together with her.
Yes.
All right.
Not at her house, but yes.
And you play a recording that you've recorded, like a voicemail from Doug for her, right?
She believed it was Doug, and she said that she could probably identify his voice because he had a unique voice. And so I played a voicemail I had from him, and she identified him.
The fact is, she didn't tell you she thought it was Doug. You just asked her if it was Doug.
I believe she contacted us and said that there was a strange man looking across into our windows, and she was freaked out, and she wasn't sure if it was him.
Okay.
The most inauthentic voice in Ballet.
I don't remember specifically. I'm sorry, this is a long time ago.
So I'm kind of talking more about Doug. She was saying that he's got this unique voice.
Oh.
And you play a recording of Doug's voice for her.
Yes, ma'am.
And she goes, oh, that's him.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
the one that was there.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is the ID that Doug was in her backyard.
I believe she also described his body type, his stature. She said he was wearing a baseball cap, which he often did. So I think that was probably
Don't a
part
lot
of
of
it.
people wear baseball caps?
But she needs to allow Ms.
I'm
Benefield
sure.
to clear answer before she cuts her off.
I've been able to follow along, so I'll overrule at this point.
There's a lot of people that are 5'9", right?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
A lot of people that weigh 160 pounds.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of people that wear baseball hats.
Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it true that this person in the backyard said to her, I live around here. I live here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I believe so. I wasn't there for that part, but that's what I believe she told me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I want to move forward to 2019. Around this time, Judge Moreland had already ruled that you could not have your injunction, right?
She denied it. Yes, ma'am.
And that Doug could have immediate visitation with his daughter.
She ordered time sharing. Yes.
Did you start visitation with Doug and Emerson very shortly after that hearing?
Yes, according to the court order. Yes, ma'am.
And you decided you were going to go with him on this visitation?
I offered, and he said he would be glad for me to come. So yes, I went.
This person that you lived in a nightmare with, you decided to go with him on this visitation?
Yes.
Now, the Judge Moreland hearing, when she ruled, she made it very clear that she did not see your side.
Sustained.
You had no faith that Judge Moreland was going to help you from that day forward.
Overruled.
You had no faith that Judge Moreland was going to help you from that day forward.
I don't know that I'd say I thought she would never help me, but I mean, she denied the injunction. Yes.
So you go for this visitation with Doug, along with him and Emerson, and that begins sort of a, I think Stephanie Murphy called it like a honeymoon period or a happy period piece. Would you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So during this time, you spent a lot of time with Doug
Yes.
and a lot of time with Emerson,
Yes.
and you weren't scared of Doug at that time.
He was being very kind.
Okay. So you weren't scared of him at that time?
No. I mean, I had things at the back of my mind, but he was being very kind.
So then around summer of 2019, you actually make arrangements with Doug. He's going to move into your mom's house.
He wanted to move in. Yes.
You actually agreed to that.
Not specifically. He didn't really ask my opinion. He told me.
Okay. And then the date that he was supposed to move in, you made plans with him,
Hold on a
correct?
second. Sir, who's crinkling the paper? Is that Mr. O'Keefe?
I was drunk.
Sir, can you please stop? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks,
So during this
Christine.
time, you're speaking with Doug,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you're talking with him about moving into your home.
He was insistent that we needed to
The
move in
answer is
together.
yes or no, please. You were talking with him.
She interrupting the answer.
If the question calls for yes or no, the questioner has the right to expect a yes or no, or I don't know, or I don't recall,
So
as opposed to a narrative.
you were speaking with Doug about him moving into the house
Yes.
and about his things being moved and when they were going to be moved.
Yes, I'm sure.
And at any time during this, did you say to Doug, no, you're not moving in?
Yes.
You said no.
I'm sorry.
You told him, no, he cannot move in?
Yes, that's why he ultimately didn't move in. As I said,
Okay.
I can't do this.
Isn't it true that in fact, you didn't tell him no, you just weren't available the day he was supposed to move in?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. So you're saying the day he was supposed to move in, he knew he wasn't supposed to move in? Is that what you're saying?
We had a conversation that day, and I told him that.
So, if I'm following, at some point she thought that he was poisoning her, and then subsequent to that, she wants him to, or allows him to move in with herself and her mother. On the one hand, I think sometimes people are paranoid and they think certain things. On the other hand, it's almost like actions speak louder than words, right?
I didn't want him moving in.
Okay. And then you did not take his phone calls. You would not speak with him. I think the word was ghosting. You ghosted.
Yeah, I think Doug doesn't want to move in with her mother. Doug wants to be married. Like Doug has married her, he has a child with her, and he wants to actually be married. And that's kind of what's going on. But she's already living with her mother, right?
Did him.
I don't know whose word that is, but that's fine. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But visitation continued.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you continued to exchange custody of Emerson where? The sheriff's office or?
I believe at that time we were doing the sheriff's office.
And sometime around this time, you show up to this visitation with an engagement ring on, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Who is Dennis Beatty?
Dennis Beatty.
Beatty. Who is that?
He was a gentleman I dated at one point.
And it was during this time that you were dating him, right?
Wow. Okay.
After I told him not to move in, and then we started just doing time sharing with Emerson. Yes, after that, there was a period of time where we dated. Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it a fact that
So don't we have an ulterior motive here as well? Isn't this a wow?
Doug filed for a divorce after one of these visitations?
I'm not sure when he filed for divorce specifically.
He filed for divorce after he knew that you were dating this other man, right?
Once again, I'm not sure when he filed.
How did he find?
I mean, a really big reason why you don't want, it's like too many cooks spoil the broth. What a big reason why you don't want an ex in the picture anymore is because you want to get on with the next person. So how do you get rid of your ex? Well, legally, that's one way, and then there's another way as well, right?
Find out. Did you tell him you were dating him?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did he find out?
Well, you didn't tell him you were dating?
I think he was stalking me.
It wasn't the ring on your finger?
It was not an engagement ring. ma'am.
Well, it was a ring. Did he see the ring on your finger?
I'm not sure what he saw. I wear rings all the time.
Okay. So Doug files for divorce,
Welcome, Colleen. Thanks for joining.
and all of a sudden you file for, well, you start a bunch of complaints, correct? About his treatment of Emerson. What you say, his bad treatment of Emerson.
Well, she started coming home hurt.
It's a yes or no question. Did you file complaints about his treatment of Emerson?
Yes.
Okay. And you eventually filed for another petition to get an injunction based on those incidences that you claim happened with Emerson.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you complained about the first time, and
I just want to highlight this. Pauline says she's not doing too well. Perhaps she shouldn't have testified, but I'm getting a sense that there are many of you here that are sympathetic towards her, or what's the word? Angry, or what's the word? Unsympathetic towards Doug, right? So certainly her testimony is resonating with some of you, and probably also with some of the jurors.
nothing was done. Is that correct? With the police, no charges were filed, nothing was done?
Colleen, this is cross-examination, right?
I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to.
The first complaint that was made,
About
Emerson and Doug, you agree that you made allegations.
Jack, can we?
Yes.
Stop. And if you went forward for this reason, did you speak with members of the sheriff's office?
I'm not sure specifically what time you're referring to.
During the time that there were allegations that Doug was abusing Emerson, did you speak to the sheriff's office?
Yes, ma'am.
On numerous occasions.
I would say so, yes.
At least 5.
Probably, yes, ma'am.
And during those conversations, you were making allegations that Doug was abusing Emerson, right?
Well, I was explaining the injury she'd come home with. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened.
Okay, but you were alleging that Doug was abusing the child.
I was concerned after her pediatrician called CPS and said that she thought she was being abused.
Are you aware that pediatricians are required to call CPS when a mother alleges that?
I didn't allege anything. I brought a video to show her at the appointment, and she called
So you
CPS.
Objection.
Finish your answer, ma'am.
Well, after showing her a video of some behavior, she called CPS and she informed me that I was also a mandatory reporter and that it would be negligent if I didn't also call and make a report.
You brought Emerson to the pediatrician specifically for this reason, correct?
No, ma'am, she had her checkup.
But you brought this up to the pediatrician.
At the end, she asked if either of us had any questions.
And that's when you bring up, oh, she must be being abused.
No, I described to her the behavior that I was seeing, and I showed her a video when she came to her own conclusions.
Okay. So you spoke to the sheriff's office about that investigation and other investigations, and about the investigations that Doug was abusing Emerson.
A sheriff usually comes out with the CPI from Child Protection.
And you spoke to them.
I mean, they were there when I was talking, I guess, yes.
And you were talking, making allegations against Doug, assuming that he caused injuries to Emerson.
I'm not sure of my exact words. I was trying to describe to them what I was seeing and my understanding of the situation at the time.
You filed a petition for an injunction based on those things, correct?
At the advice of my attorney, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Whether your attorney advised it or not, you chose to do that, correct?
Yes, I followed the advice of my attorney.
And you were aware that if you went forward on this injunction, that it was going to be in front of Judge Moreland.
Yes, ma'am.
And this injunction hearing was supposed to take place on September 30th of 2020. Yes, 2020.
Yeah, it got moved several times, but that was a date.
Okay. So it was supposed to take place on that day,
Yes, ma'am.
and there were other things pending. Do you know what the other pending items were?
Not specifically.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
One of them was Doug's request for a divorce, correct?
Hey, Mel?
Yes, we both filed for divorce at that point. Yes.
So Mr. Benefield filed for divorce, you file an injunction petition, then you file for divorce.
I filed for divorce first.
Okay.
I believe.
And then you're scheduled to have this hearing on 9:30.
Yes, the hearing was scheduled for 9:30. Yes.
And you're speaking with Doug during this time, right? I mean, we just
Yes.
heard 200 and whatever text messages between you and Doug.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you at any time in that say to him, I'm going to go forward with this injunction on Wednesday, on the 30th?
No, ma'am.
In fact, based on those text messages, you were dropping the petition for an injunction.
Yes, we talked about dropping everything. Yes.
No, you talked about it, but you said you were going to.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is what the result of the mediation was. That there was not going to be any mediation really because you were reconciling.
Yeah, we agreed, I guess, in order to move to Maryland. My understanding, the attorneys were advising us to, if we closed things down, that it would make it easier, like legal wise, for us to relocate.
So you were telling Doug that.
So that's another thing that I think is quite important here is her moving to Maryland is a kind of another way of saying, sorry, Doug, you're not going to see our child anymore. So, she doesn't want Doug to have custody or share custody. She's already met some other dude and she's already communicated that she doesn't want Doug to share custody. So moving to Maryland is another way to make that happen. You know, he's there, she's somewhere else. Doesn't that kind of play into this idea that what she really wants, in the same way that Fotis Doulos, what he really wanted was, I'm tired of battling against you over custody. You know, it's not working. Taking the legal route's just not working. Like we've said in these other cases, Chris Watts, why didn't he just get a divorce? Well, isn't this the answer? Trying to think of some other cases, Alec Murdoch, why didn't he just get a divorce? Isn't this the answer? Because it's extremely messy and it drags on for a really long time. I'm not sitting on advising, you should get a divorce. I'm just saying people who do get divorced go through this. Same thing with Suzanne Morphew. You might say, why didn't they just get a divorce? Because it's not so easy. Easier said than done.
That's what you were going to do.
Yes, we were trying to work things out so we could all go to Maryland, yes.
And drop the injunction.
That was one of the things.
And you wanted him to drop everything, right? The motion to release the report, the dissolution of marriage, you wanted him to drop everything.
No, we filed a joint stipulation so we could get the report.
But then you asked him to drop that, didn't you?
I know we kind of went back and forth with so many things.
Okay. You never had any intention of not going.
So just again, intertextually, this case has a lot in common with the Fotis Doulos, Jennifer Doulos case. It was like this long war over custody, and it wears you down and it costs you money. And if you start to dislike someone in the beginning, do those feelings eventually turn to hatred closer to the end? And when you feel like, well, the courts aren't helping to speed up or resolve or deal with the situation, what am I supposed to do?
Going forward on your injunction.
Honestly, it was kind of one of those things that some days I thought that maybe I should, and some days I thought that I shouldn't.
So during this 1 week before you shot Doug, you're talking and you're saying to him things like, oh, we're packing boxes, we're getting everything together. This whole time, you knew you weren't going to stop that injunction hearing.
I hadn't decided yet.
Okay. Your attorney testified that you were going forward on that injunction hearing.
She was advising me to keep it.
Now, I think that's also interesting underlying intention. This is what I want to happen. Do I have any confidence that it is going to happen? Right? That's what actions speak louder than words. So that's what she's thinking at the time of this incident.
Okay. So during this time when you're telling Doug to bring different boxes, bring tape, you asked him to go to Selby Gardens, right?
Yes, we all went. I think we got lunch. We brought Emerson so she could play.
Okay. And you are having conflicted emotions about whether to go forward on an injunction.
Yes, ma'am.
While you're out having these types of experiences with them.
Yeah, sometimes things are really good and other times they weren't.
Okay. And so how about, let's see.
Well, I must say, her eyes look very watery right here. Like she does seem genuinely kind of tearful here.
This is part of State's Exhibit 98.
I didn't know what it's doing. I think it's giving you clues that I gotta guess.
Is it like with words? I'd say not safe.
Get real?
Second part.
Really?
Like working mother, not a working mother.
Working mother, not a working mother?
Not a working mother. I live in
Slum. Oh no, it's running out of time.
I live in
House.
a and
Real house. White.
So put together.
Oh, housewives of.
No housewife.
Oh, real. Oh.
And this video was taken the week before you
Wow.
shot him, right?
I don't know the exact date.
When was, I mean, in your mind, it was very close to the time, correct?
Yeah, I'm sure it was right around then. I don't remember when it was.
And during this time that you were having these text messages with Doug and you're planning to move to Maryland, there's no violence going on.
No,
No,
I guess not. No,
he's not hitting you.
no, ma'am.
He's not choking you.
No, ma'am.
He's not shoving you around.
No, ma'am.
So this entire time, there is no violence going on.
I don't know specifically what time frame you're talking about. I'm sorry.
But during this, let's say from 2018 to 2019, when you're not living with them,
I mean, if you classify violence as him like
I'm asking
punching
if
me or
there's
choking me.
physical violence
I
during
mean,
this time.
he could be rough sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he ever punch you?
Not during that time, no.
Did he ever hit you?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever use a weapon against you during that time?
Not during that time, no.
So in between the time of 2019 to 2020, where you shot him, was there any physical violence?
Like I said, sometimes he'd be a little rough, you know.
But other than that, he never was physically violent.
He didn't like punch holes in the walls or anything like that, no.
So when I asked you if has he been violent, you said, well, he didn't punch holes in the walls. Is that what you just said?
That's what I just said, yes, ma'am.
So punching a hole in a wall to you is a definition. When I ask, was he violent? Your definition of that is punching a hole in a wall.
I think that is violent.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So hang on just a second.
So if you think about this case, part of the case is not just what he did on that day. In other words, him being apparently aggressive, him being apparently threatening, him being apparently hostile. It's this idea that he was scary or threatening over a long period of time, right? So part of, I think, her defense is that he was generally threatening, and so when he was in the house that day, that was like the culmination of it. And if that's true, then it's a very fair defense. The only thing that for me is strange is if someone is so threatening, why would you ask them to help you to move? And that's where you've got to ask, did she lure him there? Or because you could also imagine that she would theoretically, and I think this is quite interesting, she would theoretically know that she'd have a very good defense because he has a bit of a track record of being, what's the word? It might not be that hard to prove that he's, I don't want to use the A word, you know what I'm saying? And so if she wanted to do what she wanted to do, she'd be able to provide quite a good argument, which is doing here, that it was self-defense. You know, do you follow my reasoning here? Anyway, let's continue.
So I want to get to the day that all of this happened. This happened on a Sunday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're moving on, or you have a hearing on Wednesday,
I believe that's correct.
and
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
moving right after that.
I think the actual day of move was kind of in flux. It seemed like it changed 1,000 times.
You're all getting in the car together, not together, but you're driving cars together to go to Maryland.
Yeah, I believe he was going to be driving the U-Haul and pulling his truck. And I think that my mom was driving her car and I was driving mine.
And you were telling him during that time that you were going to move to Maryland and attempt to reconcile.
No, ma'am.
You weren't telling him that.
No, not in those words. No.
Did you hear Dr. Broder testify about that? That he said that when you were with Doug,
Objection here.
Sustained.
so you're denying that you ever told Doug that you were wanting to reconcile with him.
I said I wanted to find a way that we could do things together as a family for Emerson's sake, you know, and that's why we started doing things differently. He wanted to move back in, you know, together, and I told him that I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel comfortable with that.
Did you say that in Dr. Broder's office in front of Doug?
No, not in front of him.
So when you're with a safe person, a psychologist, you're not telling Doug this.
What? I'm sorry.
You're saying that you told Doug when it was just the two of you that you didn't want to move in together.
Yes, ma'am.
And you felt safe telling him, I don't want to move in with you. Right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, we had that conversation many times. Yes.
But you're in front of this psychologist who one would think is a safe environment with Doug sitting next to you. You hear Doug say to Dr. Broder, we are going to Maryland and we are going to try and reconcile. And you don't feel safe enough to say to Dr. Broder, no, that's not what I want to do.
I would want to make him look bad in front of somebody else.
Okay.
I wasn't going to disagree with him in front of anybody.
So that's quite a critical point. She says, I wouldn't want to make him look bad in front of anyone else. So first of all, do you think that, do you believe that? Like in terms of that situation? In front of a therapist, you're supposed to kind of be quite open about your gripes. The fact that you're actually there tends to mean that you are open. But let me put it into another perspective. Right now, right here in court, is she trying to make him look bad in front of everyone else? Like right now? Is she trying her best to make him look as bad as possible in front of everyone else? She's got his texts. She said what a horrible husband he was to Renee. She said she thought he's poisoning her. And what do you think about that? Isn't this whole trial about her trying to make him look as bad as possible?
Okay. So the plan was to load up the truck, get everything done, and then move very shortly after the court hearing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Hi, Elise. Some of you don't know, I've actually met Elise in California. Must say the last time I saw you, it was such a good meal that we had. I'll never forget that meal. It was really enjoyable with another friend of mine. Good to see you here.
And you had no intention of dropping that injunction, so you knew on the day of that hearing, he was going to know, right?
I'm sorry.
You knew that Doug was going to know that you had no intention of reconciling with him.
We had the conversation many times. I think he understood where I was at.
Okay. You saw the text messages between you and him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you agree that those text messages do not indicate that?
It doesn't say we're getting back together, moving in together.
It doesn't say we're not going to reconcile.
I mean, not specifically, no, I wasn't going to argue with him.
If you got your injunction on that day, September 30th, how would you have moved together?
Speculative.
I'll sustain.
What was your plan if that injunction was
Speculative.
granted?
Different question. Overruled.
Objection. Speculative.
No. You can approach. I'll sustain.
What was your plan if that injunction was
Speculative.
granted?
I thought
Different
I went
question.
forward.
Overruled.
So if the injunction were granted on that day, what was your plan about moving to Maryland with Doug?
I don't know that I really had a plan. I wasn't even sure whether or not I was going to go through the injunction at that point.
Yeah, there's something funny.
Take care.
Wonder what that was all about.
Okay, so I want to get to the night that all this happened. So you knew Doug was coming over.
Yes.
You invited him over
Yes.
to help you move stuff in the house.
More specifically stuff in the garage, but yes.
Well, that's interesting. She invited him over. It's not like he wanted to come over and she said, okay. She invited him over. She's the one who's moving and she invites him over.
Stuff in the garage to the truck.
Hmm.
Right. And he came to your house a couple of times. He came and then left and then came back again.
Yeah, I believe he came twice that day.
And there is a gate to your community.
Hmm.
And when he's at the gate, you had to let him in.
Sometimes, because he was frequent in and out, sometimes the gate remembers license plates and sometimes it opens and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he would just follow people in. The gate kind of stays open for a while. But yeah, sorry.
But on this day,
So just in terms of intertextuality, potential intertextuality, how many cases can we think of where someone lured someone else? Well, I would say Alec Murdaugh appears that he lured Maggie to Moselle in order to kill her and Paw Paw at the same time, right? There's even a bit of a sense of the luring with Chris Watts, I think. I mean, I can't prove it, but I've got a scenario that I think happened with Chris Watts. He was waiting for Shanann to come home. Anyway, that's a slightly different one. I'm just trying to think of another one that involves luring. Can you guys think of another case that involves luring? I would say Jodi Arias. She lures, manipulates Travis to the shower under the pretext of taking photos of him, and now he's naked and somewhat isolated, and that's when she attacked him. So that's two lure cases. I'm just trying to think if there are any others. But I mean, at least one of these cases is a woman luring a man into a situation where he's quite vulnerable. Think about Laurie Vallow luring. I don't know if luring is the right word, but there's certainly plotting going on in terms of getting people to do certain things, where Laurie really seemed to be calling a lot of the shots, right? As you say, in the Morphew case, Suzanne moves to another state, and shortly after that, she dies. Brian Laundrie certainly seemed manipulative. Is there luring in terms of Brian Koberger? Maybe not so much, but it certainly is an interesting thing to think about.
You weren't concerned about him coming over?
No, I knew he was coming.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. Laurie Vallow luring Charles Vallow. Like, that really seemed like Laurie knew exactly what was going to happen to him. And Charles wasn't he lured to that residence? And Alex Cox was there, right? It's a great example. Colorado guy with his ex at the house. What's that case?
And when he came over, your mother and Emerson went to the...
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example as well. The Long Island serial killer, although it's prostitutes, in a way, you're luring them with whatever, with money, with your spiel, right?
park.
I believe they were headed there. I'm not sure. I think they were down the driveway or on the sidewalk, something like that. They were on their way there.
You weren't so afraid that you wanted your mother to stay there and watch?
No, we were just packing to move.
Okay, so you weren't afraid?
I definitely didn't expect this to happen.
So it was okay with you that your mother left?
Yeah, at that time.
Okay. So if I heard you right during your direct, you said he bumped your shoulder twice. Body check, I don't know if that's what you called it. He walked into you with a box, right?
Yes.
And then at the end, you say he slapped you?
He hit me.
On the side of his head, right?
I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. And because of those things, you claim that you thought he was going to kill you.
He had never hit me before.
Okay. And you thought he was going to kill you.
He wouldn't let me leave. I tried to leave. He stopped me.
The question is, you thought he was going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you were in the bedroom, you decided to get your firearm. And it was where?
It was in a storage bin on top of the laundry basket.
Okay. So I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 52. If you could turn around and look at that. Where was your firearm?
It was in the bin on top of the basket.
Here?
That's the basket. The laundry
Where was
basket.
the bin?
It's that right on top.
Okay. So it was in here.
Yes, ma'am.
Why would you have a firearm in there?
I had just emptied all the furniture and everything out of my room, and it was kind of like what was left in my drawers, and so it got put into a bin.
Okay. And that was not your only firearm in that room, correct?
Correct.
You had a firearm in the closet.
My carry gun was in my backpack, which was my purse at the time.
So in this room, with a mattress and a broom and a hamper, you had 2 firearms.
Yes.
So you go into the room and you grab your firearm. Is it in a holster?
I don't remember.
Okay. And you claim that Doug does what?
He came and slammed the door open. He was standing in the doorway. He said, "You're fucking done."
He said, "You're fucking done." And that made you fear for your life.
Yeah.
Can we turn the lights up, please? Thank you. So he says you're fucking done, and you point the gun and you shoot.
I held it out in front of me first so he could see it. And I said, "Stop."
Judge, if I could have her step down so she can demonstrate.
You may.
If you could just come down. So Doug opens the door and does what?
Standing in the doorway, kind of like this. He said, "You're fucking done." And I held the gun out in front of me. I said, "Stop." He got into this like fighting pose, literally like turned sideways. And he was like moving around with his like arms in his hands. And he started like inching forward towards me.
Okay, so I've got two problems with what she's just demonstrated. The one is she's pointing downwards, like you would imagine that you'd point the gun at someone is coming at you. You'd imagine you'd point the gun, stay, stop. You wouldn't be pointing down, stop. That's the one thing. The other thing is she said he was inching towards her. Someone's inching towards you, they're not moving very quickly, right? Do you mind if I go back to that? Just go back to that again. See, why would you be pointing down? If you are trying to defend your life, I don't think you're going to point down, you're going to point at someone, right? If you've gone to the trouble to get a gun to defend yourself because you think your life's in imminent danger, why are you now not going to point the gun at the person? So why in court is she pointing the gun down? No, but I think you're kind of missing what I'm saying. If someone is inching towards you, well then in 1 second they move an inch and in another second they move an inch. You could take a full step back. And then they move another inch forward, and they could take another step back. Right? I don't know if you follow. It's just a bit odd.
I held the gun out in front of me. I said, "Stop." He got into this like fighting.
Also, would you say stop or would you scream stop? Would you be shouting, this is the most frightened you've ever been in your entire life. Someone's just hit you. Would you say stop? Or would you say, "Stop"? Right? Wouldn't you be shouting in a way that would alert other people? This is a life and death situation. You are adrenalized. You are absolutely scared. You're traumatized. Would you just say stop?
He finally literally turned sideways. And he was like moving around with his like arms in his hands. And
So when she describes that, she says he's moving around with his hands, but so what's he actually doing? Is he doing this? I don't want to minimize how scary it is when someone is angry and they sort of storming, but why would you be inching forward and kind of doing this? You would imagine that now would be the time to say exactly what happened to her. I suppose you could say she's so traumatized that she can't actually be eloquent or effective in communicating it. It just is a little bit difficult to accept at face value. Or am I being unsympathetic?
he started like inching forward towards me.
So he Why do you call it a fighting stance?
He looks like a fighter. Like I don't know, like a ninja or something, I don't know.
Okay, so he's standing there, he turns to like this and starts moving his arms around.
Like that.
Well, show me, what was he doing?
And like I already got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know, I'm not a fighter, I don't know.
Okay,
It was scary.
did he have his hands in fists?
Not at that point, they were like, I don't know.
Was he coming at you like this?
And he lunged at me, he came really quickly.
Okay, so he lunged, was his fist up when he
I
lunged?
don't remember.
So you start shooting, and he does what?
He kept coming at me.
Okay, so then you keep shooting again. And he falls down on his back.
His legs went up in the air.
Okay, where do his legs go?
In the air.
How high in the air?
I don't know.
Do they go over his head?
I don't know. It's like his feet slipped out.
Okay.
And his feet and his legs went up in the air.
And were you still shooting at the time?
I don't remember.
You can have a seat.
Okay, so in the Henry van Breda trial, the prosecutor did exactly the same thing. She had Henry reenact his tussle with the supposed intruder, and it just didn't seem very believable. So Henry would basically say, I took the axe out of the guy's hand. So she said, okay, well, I'll demonstrate it. So he was just like, okay, well, there's the axe. I took it out of his hand. And the reason why the prosecutor's wanting the reenactment is because she obviously doesn't think it happened. And if it didn't happen, then it's going to be difficult to role play it because you've kind of got to make it up, right? And so that's kind of, I think, what she was trying to do there. And so the question is, in that role play, did you find it believable? Did you find this believable? Will the jury find it believable? Just to note, Jodi Arias actually also described someone in the house as a ninja. She kind of used the same thing, which I think it's so picturesque, it's so imaginative that it's very likely not true. That's just my opinion.
So after this incident, you claim that you had swelling to your face, right?
So what's happening here, whether you accept what's going on, whether you're sympathetic, whether you believe her, it's actually impossible to ask her a question because you can't see her face and she's kind of almost drowning out the questions because she's crying, right? And you kind of had that impression at the time of the incident as well, that she was so traumatized that she couldn't really speak. Now you have that right now. She's in court. She's being asked questions by the prosecutor, and she can't actually talk or verbalize because she's so emotional, right? I must say, the last case that I dealt with where this happened was Oscar Pistorius, where whenever the testimony got to the most pertinent things, you couldn't really talk because there was this overwhelming emotion. And you either accept that and say, wow, I feel so sorry for this person, but then it's like, we're trying to find out what happened, but I guess we just can't find out. It's too emotional. Or it's being used as a contrivance to prevent the difficult to tell story from coming out, right? So Romper Ruin says, I didn't watch the cross, the direct, but she did break down, but I would say not as much as she is now. She did certainly, she was pretty emotional.
All right, there's the jury. Can you please close up your notes, put them on your chairs. I'm going to ask you to step out for a minute. You can use the facilities. It's not quite our mid-afternoon break, but we'll treat it as such. Please don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't discuss it with anybody outside the jury. Don't
Yeah, I
do
think
research like
Jody Arias also used a hair curtain, right?
talk about.
So what are the two competing narratives in this case? The one narrative is she murdered Doug because she wanted full custody of their child, and there was a struggle at that time for custody. She was trying to get control of legal custody. We know that for a fact. So this crime happened in the middle of a long struggle to get custody. That's the one argument. That's her motive. The other argument is that Doug attacked her and she shot him in self-defense. And I think there's a third scenario, which is that it's a combination of both. That she did want custody, that Doug wasn't the nicest guy in the world, that Doug did intimidate her, ... right?
All right, y'all can have a seat. Welcome back, everybody. Usual questions. Did anybody discuss the case or anything about the case amongst yourselves with anybody outside the jury or do any research? Everybody says no. You may resume your cross-examination.
Thank you. Can we dim the lights again, please? Thank you. So after this incident, you said you had swelling,
Yes, ma'am.
and that would be to the left side of your face?
Yes, ma'am.
And that would be where? Show me where.
Like in this area.
Now, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 103. I'm going to put it up on the big screen. Can you tell me what this is?
It's a picture of me.
And when was it taken?
I have no idea.
Well, it's the picture
Was
behind
this
me.
taken before you met Doug?
I believe so.
Now I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 104.
Doug's
And
cousin
I'll
shaking
move
his
it up a
head.
little bit. When was this picture taken?
I believe in October of 2020.
Wasn't it taken on November 4th of 2020?
I believe that's correct. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Redirect.
No further questions.
All right, man. You can retake your seat. Just leave that exhibit there.
Well, what
Maybe
are
not-
we
you can take your water. and
ending
make
from the
that-
prosecutor?
There you go.
What a, I don't know. She ended with a whimper.
Just, yeah, the clerk. Thank you. All All right, defense, call your next witness.
I believe it's Samara Sweet, Your Honor. We're just checking to make sure she's here.
Judge, I think we need to have a conversation.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Don't know if we're gonna go on much longer than this. I really just did want to cover the testimony of the Black Swan defendant, Ashley Benefield. So what this all was about was just looking at and listening to the testimony and saying, do you believe it? Is it credible? But also, how good are you at telling the difference between, can you tell when someone's lying? Can you tell genuine emotion? Because there is genuine emotion. Can you tell the difference between genuine emotion and manufactured emotion, right? And also, how good are you? How good are we at how good are our perceptions? How good are our perceptual skills in telling the difference between what's real and what's not, what's authentic and what's not, what's true and what's not? And I must say, this is quite a sticky case because the emotions are so kind of overwhelming. I know what I think, but I think the bottom line is I think this is going to be quite a difficult case to get a conviction on. I think there's got to be at least one or two jurors that are having doubts, if not more. Let's have a quick look at some of your comments. Yeah, I mean, that is a fact. She is a performer. Even if she's innocent, you would imagine she would perform on the stand because that would have to help her, to not show remorse. By the way, if you want to get the maximum sentence, well, show no remorse in a murder trial. If you want to get, I won't say the minimum sentence, but let's say you are convicted, one way that your sentence could be reduced is if the judge decides, or even the jury decides, you have shown I've been convinced of your remorse. And to not show any remorse is a lot worse than showing pretended remorse. I mean, at least you're trying to show remorse, I guess. Yeah, good point. Let's look at some of your other comments. CP says 2 things can be true at once. Absolutely. I think there's so much of that in true crime where you say she's guilty and he was quite a good guy and she's evil and manipulative, or the other one is he's extremely bad and she's the innocent victim here. In a case like this, I think it's really both. It's really a mixed bag. Catherine Kurgo, good to see you here. Okay. Silent Murmur says she hid her face and needed only a single tissue for all that crying. Interesting point. Christine says, whoa, she straightened out fast. Silent Murmur says she's sad for herself having to be in the situation. Azza says these people were far too comfortable around guns. That's also an interesting point. Sounds of Silence says, how often do you come on? Actually, very seldom. I don't really do a lot of live streams on this channel. Pauline says the jury could be swayed by the fact that Doug doesn't seem like a very sympathetic person. Absolutely. Also, Ashley is kind of small and bird-like, and she seems sensitive. And it's almost like if you make a loud noise, you'd frighten her. She seems very sensitive and well, she's smiling there. Have a look. Let's go slightly back. So hopefully we can see that clip again. She was like 1 minute totally distressed. Let's just have a look. Am I going to be able to find it now? Did you guys see where she kind of leaned over to a lawyer and there it is? She kind of seems to make a joke. Did you see that? She kind of seems to make a joke. Well, it's unfortunate that they cut away at that point. I had such an important point that I wanted to make. Oh, let me make it before I forget. And I sort of made it in the previous video, is the notion that I wish the prosecutor would bring this up. I don't know whether they're allowed to. Is Liesel here? I don't know if it sort of counts as character evidence, or I don't know if it would be allowed. But what I notice is the person we see in court is extremely fragile, is extremely emotional, is extremely vulnerable, is extremely easily upset, is extremely all of those things, right? And yet we know that ballet dancers are tough, resilient. They've got extremely hard regimens, just regarding everything. They follow a really strict diet. Their training is like extremely tough. The whole performance for a ballet dancer is actually physically painful. The thing where you turn, you kind of stand on your toes, your toes are being crushed. If you're not sure what the whole ballet thing's about, go and watch Black Swan. You don't have to watch the plot, you don't have to care about anything, but just get a sense of how bruised those bodies become, how painful it is to sculpt your body into this shape that is a ballet dancer, right? It is really brutal. And so you're telling me that this person we see in court is actually a ballet dancer? Like, if you didn't know she was a ballet dancer and somebody, let's say you just saw her in court and someone said, okay, what does she do for a living? You might say, well, maybe she's a kindergarten teacher, or maybe she cares for animals or something. I don't know, something like that. The last thing that you'd actually choose, I think, would be a ballet dancer, because, as I said, ballet dancers are resilient. Ballet dancers are tough as nails, right? And so for me, that's the biggest issue here. Is this the biggest boo-hoo-hoo baby ballet dancer that's ever existed? Or does this ballet dance have two faces? And that's where the whole Black Swan thing comes in. It's like Swan Lake, White Swan, and then does a black swan has another face, another side to themselves? Is that what we're dealing with here? When I wrote the series of books on Chris Watts, I called it Two-Face, right? That this gentle, kind, Mr. Nice Guy, a golden boy dude had another side to him, right? Same thing here. Does this sweet, vulnerable, sensitive young lady have a totally different side to her? And we are talking about a ballet dancer that shoots her husband 4 times, ex-husband at the time, shoots her ex-husband 4 times to death. So just put that thought in your mind. A ballet dancer picks up a gun and shoots her husband 4 times to death. Is she a white swan or a black swan kind of thing? That's kind of just what I'm getting at. So, like you can like get, you can like focus on the details, which you need to do, but I think you can also just look at the bigger picture and say, is it congruent? Is there a mismatch? Right? What do you guys think? I just made a few notes here. Christine says, Tanny says, where's her father? And what I find quite interesting is, number one, she's a performer. She was asked right at the beginning, what are your values? Or I think she was asked, what attracted you to Doug? And she said, his kindness and compassion. Well, first of all, his kindness, and he was pretty generous. He gave a lot of money and he allowed them to live apart, and she had his child and he never even saw the child for 6 months. All of that's pretty kind in a way and generous in a way. But was he really compassionate? Look at how he treated dogs. I don't know. So when she says his kindness and compassion, it rings a bit hollow to me. The other thing that's interesting is her own father was in the military. Her own father is a Navy pilot. What that suggests to me is she's not as soft as what I think she either pretends to be or seems to be. Her own dad is a military dude. So you would imagine she kind of likes toughness. She likes discipline. She likes a man who is the sort of military type of person. And her mother's a stay-at-home mom. So it's almost like she quite likes that sort of role, that where the man is the man of the house. I'm saying that's what it appears. I'm not saying that's the right way to be. I'm just saying, in terms of this, her own father was a military dude, and her mother was a stay-at-home mom, and it seems like she wanted to be a kind of a stay-at-home mom herself. Right now, she's a stay-at-home mom. She doesn't have a job. The other thing that's interesting is she's an only child, and what can you? And I know this is going to be quite controversial to say this, but aren't only children sometimes quite spoiled, quite entitled, quite selfish, I guess? And so is that an insight into her? The fact that she's an only child, isn't she acting in this marriage almost like an only child in a sense? And she kind of wants to have her own only child, right? Then I made a note here. I don't quite know what I was trying to say. Parents very involved. I think she was saying parents were very involved in her life. Well, where are parents now? Like I don't think I've ever seen either of her parents make some kind of, like in the Troconis trial. Did you ever, in the Troconis trial, you saw all the family members sort of backing her up, Michelle Troconis, and yet with Ashley Benefield, I don't see her parents unless they're there and I've just missed them. Anyway, that's just a quick little assessment off the top of my head. And I mean, in terms of the military thing, there's the love of guns as well. It's not just him as well, and Doug's cousin as well. Christine says she's a ballerina. That says a lot about her. Yeah. Army brats can be standoffish. So I just I personally see a lot of incongruence, but the fact is Doug was I would yeah, Doug's not a harmless person. Yeah. The part that I find kind of sticky is if you say there are many forms of ABUSC, right? And you say it really was self-defense because he was saying nasty things at her. He was waving his hands. He was scary. He was frightening her. At what point do you have the right, if someone is, let's say someone is saying to you, be quiet, does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot them? Most people would say no. Then you take it up a level and you say, someone is shouting at you, shut up, shut up, shut up. Okay, that's worse. Does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot someone? It's just words. Now, you might say, no, that's also not at a high enough level of like your life's in imminent danger. Now, let's say someone says, you are a this and that and that and that. Does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot someone? And you can take it up all these levels where someone is just saying really, really horrible words. What if someone is sitting in a chair saying, I'm going to do this and this to you? Does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot someone? And you could go through the whole list of things, of horrible things someone could say. Does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot someone, right? If you're crying enough, can you say, wow, someone said this, doesn't that give you the right to shoot someone? Then you take it up another level and you say, someone is whatever, doing somersaults, doing cartwheels, doing flick flacks, running around in circles, doing push-ups, running from one side of the room to the other. I'm being purposefully absurd here, but does that give you the right to shoot them? That's like, well, I don't know what you're doing, so I'll just make sure that I know what's going on. I'll just shoot you. What if someone just runs at you? Now they are like, okay, let's start with this. What if someone walks towards you? Does that give you the right to pick up a gun and shoot them? Okay, now what if somebody runs to you? They're not armed. Does that give you the right to shoot them? What if someone's got a pen in their hand and they run towards you? Does that give you the right to shoot you? What if someone's got a coffee cup in their hand? Does that give you the right to shoot them? And you can go on and on and on. And then at what point do you say that does give you the right? At what point can you kind of make that argument? Could you say if someone's got a knife in their hand, does that give you the right to shoot someone? That's starting to me to get quite close to that point. Now, I was once in a situation where I was cutting a peach. This was many years ago. I was cutting up a peach, and I was at the same time just saying that I was not very happy about certain things. And I was in a lounge, and there were, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was a man and a woman in the lounge, and somehow the man seemed to interpret what I was doing as threatening. So I was literally complaining about certain things, not shouting, just not very happy. And I was literally just eating this peach, and I had a knife in my hands, and I meant to eat the peach. I didn't mean to communicate any other signal. And just like this guy who I barely knew had pulled the knife out of my hand, and he was holding it like towards my stomach. And I was like, oh shit, I might be dead in the next 2-3 seconds. And I was like, I kind of recognized he thinks I'm threatening, or he thinks I'm trying to make a threat. And I wasn't. And the next thing, he's got a knife in his hand, and I've got a peach in my hand, and I'm like, I was like absolutely shocked. And I just sort of stepped slowly backwards and sort of walked away. But that could so easily have just gone the other way. The guy could have thought, wow, you trying to hurt us. I'll take the knife out your hand. Now what you're going to do, I better kill you before you kill me. It's like, and so if you take that situation, let's say I had been stabbed, could you make the argument that was done in self-defense? Right? And you might say, yes, you had a weapon, but I also had a peach, which I was eating, right? And that's why I'm just saying you've got to be quite careful, I think, where you say ABUSE is just raising your voice. And so that justifies any level of lethal defense. So if you say to someone really loudly, I hate you, can you then just shoot them? I would say no, right? So I understand that there's a certain amount of unacceptable conduct that you do feel traumatized by, but I don't know whether it justifies lethal right lethal intervention. Just see what some of you guys say. Elise says it's so complex and case by case. Wow, was Alison Chow's dad arrested? I really didn't know that. I did see that he gave a press conference. Catherine says some criminologists believe that children of armed forces personnel have trouble relating emotion. That's interesting. Silent Murmur says, if you watch the moments again where she's crying and blows her nose into the tissue, you can see that as she begins to hear the sound, she wails and hides her face. Okay. Songbird says, I'm a military brat. Okay. But I do think the biggest insight into Ashley is that she's a ballerina. That tells you the most. She's a performer. She's tough. And is there a third thing? She's a performer. She's tough. How much do ballerinas get paid? Because that was another aspect. And also, as soon as if you're a ballerina with a child, do you still have a ballet career ahead of you? What is your need? What are your requirements if you're a ballerina that has a child? What do you suddenly need now? Yeah, regimented, she is disciplined. Pauline says, I wonder what the real motive was. Well, I think if there is a motive, I think it's to do with you're not going to get custody. We're not going to share custody. We're not going to keep battling over custody. Basically, I want custody. I'm going to get custody. And if you think about it, it's really interesting is at the same time that he comes to the house, her mother leaves with their child, which isn't that like a indirect way of saying what I need is this child, and I'm going to have the mother, my mother, go out the house with the child, and now I'm going to take care of the custody, just theoretically. Another thing that's I think interesting is, did she maybe say to Doug, don't you want to see our daughter before we go to Maryland? In other words, that may have been, wouldn't that be the obvious reason for him to come over to the house? They're about to go to Maryland. Don't you want to come and see your daughter before we go? Wouldn't that, because if she said to him, hi, I really would like your help moving, like most guys that are in a divorce situation, that would be the last thing they'd want to do. Oh, I'd love to help you move. Okay, should I pick up this refrigerator by myself and carry it into the truck? Where do you want me to put it? Doesn't it make more sense that he would want to go there, and it would make sense for him to go there to see off his daughter? And then when he arrives, his daughter's not there. And then he's like, what's going on? What's this about? And then maybe she says, well, don't worry, she's just on her way back, something like that. Anyway, wow, this is quite a long live stream, 3.5 hours. Okay, last comments? Yeah, photos do last. Elise says, possibly not wanting him following them around. Yeah. Earth says, it's likely the daughter was bait. Silent Murmur says, why would she expect him to want to help her pack? Absolutely. Why? As this is involuntary manslaughter, but not murder. If it is murder, well, let me put it this way. It's possible that this is premeditated murder, but I just think you're going to never be able to prove that, or you're going to struggle to be able to prove that. I don't think I think she's charged with second degree murder, which I think is already a kind of a victory, right? Thanks, Tanny. Hopefully some useful points right there at the end. Cool. Okay, so that's it from my side. I've got a really, I think, interesting analysis on Amanda Knox. I completely stumbled upon it. I was just trying to find that footage of Amanda Knox outside the villa, and then I stumbled upon an interview that I've seen before, but I hadn't watched that part of it before, and so I just I think it's really, really interesting. I did some really what's the word, fine microexpression, what's the word, behavioral analysis in terms of that. I just hope that my graphic design and I can, in terms of the editing, deliver it to you guys in a way where you can really appreciate what you're trying to show. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Also, the Rex Huerman, the next deep dive we'll do that on Saturday, and then I'll also be doing the next in the series on Thomas Crooks, dealing with depression, and also what would be good advice for Thomas Crooks to come out of, what's the way back from happiness? If you're an unhappy young man, if you're some kind of disenfranchised young man, like, okay, so that's why you're unhappy, but what's a way to get out of that? So that's another conversation we'll be having. Thanks everyone for joining us. The Rex Huerman deep dive will be like 8 or 10 minutes for everybody, and then the rest will be for members. So yeah. Thanks very much, Chelsea, for being here. I know Ison was here for a while. Thanks everyone for being here. We also saw Liesel for a while. Thanks very much for being here. Take care, guys. Also, thanks very much for the super chats from Tanny, Liesel, Earth, Christine, and then Colleen has also joined as a member. So I really appreciate that. Okay, take care. See you guys next time. Ciao.